So we've got a new video up over at thomhartmann.com for people who support our program, and it's there's a really troubling concatenation of events, events, that are happening in the United States right now. We created these concentration camps for refugees seeking asylum. This was Stephen Miller's big project. And we've got concentration camps for children, concentration camps for male adults, concentration camps for female adults. And now we've got this virus sweeping through the United States, and people are starting to die in these concentration camps, which has provoked ICE or whoever's running them to deport hundreds of the children back to the countries that they came from without their parents, which is mind-boggling, and in many cases carrying disease. This is serious stuff, and we need to be talking about it. The new video is over at thomhartmann.com.
Today's book in our book club is The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Who Stole Your Vote and How to Get It Back, by this guy, Thom Hartmann. This is from chapter 1, or from the introduction, actually. In 2016, 6% of Americans who were eligible to vote nominated Donald Trump as the GOP's presidential candidate. It was 8% for Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side. Trump went on to be elected president by 26% of eligible voters. The modern American oligarchs have largely stayed in power using three simple elements: explicit and overt racism, massive disinformation campaigns, and voter suppression. No ideas, no push for better schools, hospitals, airports, roads, or bridges, or reform of our health, energy, or financial systems. No promise of more and better jobs. None of these staples of past presidential campaigns can be found in pretty much any Republican advertising today. Instead, the public Republican message is all about race, or the subset of race, religion. Muslim stands in for brown Arab in GOP speak, and immigration, aka brown people from south of our border, and socialism. Meanwhile, Republican secretaries of state across the nation are vigorously purging voters from the rolls. Over 17 million, more than 10% of America's active voters, in just the 2016-2018 period, according to NBC News. After the, after the 5 Republican appointees on the U.S. Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, 14 GOP-controlled states moved within a year, some within days, to restrict access to the vote, particularly for communities of color, students, and retired people. In North Carolina, for example, 158 polling places were permanently closed in the 40 counties with the most African-American voters just before the 2016 election, leading to a 16% decline in African-American early voting in that state. An MIT study found that nationwide, Hispanic voters wait 150% longer in line than white voters, and black voters can expect to wait 200% longer in line to vote. In Indiana, then Governor Mike Pence's new rigorous voter ID law caused an 11.5% drop in African-American voting. Students are suing for their right to vote, and retired people who no longer drive but care passionately about their Social Security and Medicare are being turned away at the polls by the hundreds of thousands because their driver's licenses have expired. The obvious failure of 40-plus years of Reaganomics and GOP policies to maintain a functional middle class in America has been a problem for the modern GOP. In 1974, for example, the GOP had outright control of only 7 states. The message, elect us and we'll help the rich people, just didn't generally resonate with American voters. It's the reason why, outside of the fluke elections of 46 and 52, Democrats controlled the House of Representatives outright for 3 generations, from 1933 to 1996, and controlled the Senate for most of that time. Desperate to win the presidency for the GOP in 1968, Richard Nixon went so far as to commit treason by torpedoing a peace deal with President Lyndon Johnson that President Lyndon Johnson had worked out with the North and South Vietnamese. According to Abul Hassan Bani Sadr, then president of Iran, Ronald Reagan did the same thing by cutting a deal with Iran whereby they would hold on to the U.S. embassy hostages until after the 1980 presidential election, torpedoing Jimmy Carter's chances of re-election. But in 2000, the GOP changed tactics. After Reagan was almost busted for his part in Iran-Contra, he testified that he had forgotten about details of the program more than 80 times. His growing Alzheimer's spared him an indictment. They realized that getting busted for treason wasn't worth the risk. They needed a plan B. and it was deliciously simple. If most voters don't like what you're selling, then just don't let them vote. Paul Weyrich promoted this idea back in 1980 when he was campaigning for Reagan after co-founding the Heritage Foundation. And indeed, many Republican luminaries, such as William Rehnquist, who went from serving the GOP by standing in polling places and intimidating Hispanic and Native American voters in the 1960s, to becoming Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, rose up through the ranks by participating in Republican-run voter intimidation schemes. Voter suppression became the foundational go-to tactic for the GOP in 2000. Although the GOP attacked Democratic presidential nominee Al Gore with smear and innuendo, ridiculing him for helping write the legislation that created the modern internet, for example, the main thing that got George W. Bush into the White House was voter suppression. His brother, Florida Governor Jeb Bush, and Bush's Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, threw somewhere between 20,000 and 90,000 African-American voters off the rolls. They were able to get the vote close enough. The 5 Republican appointees to the Supreme Court functionally awarded Bush the presidency. The BBC covered this in 2001 in 2 major investigative reports that were seen all over the world, except on any American media. By 2016, the Republican Party had fine-tuned its voter suppression and intimidation systems to the point that they ran like well-oiled machines in nearly 30 states. Between the 2012 and 2016 presidential elections, for example, Ohio had purged more than 2 million voters from its rolls, the vast majority, more than 2 to 1, in heavily African-American and Hispanic counties. The 5 Republican appointees on the Supreme Court ruled in 2017 that they could keep it up. And other states have since adopted their new tactic of caging voters. The book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, by me.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And happy Thursday. It's Thom Hartmann here with you on the place where smart people get their news, Thom Hartmann Program. In our first hour, I want to get into Trump and trade and the police. And of course, the Supreme Court just handed a big victory to young people, children who were brought here to this country from other countries as children. The DACA recipients, they call themselves Dreamers, which is a beautiful name. And the good news is the court said, no, Trump, you can't do that. The bad news is the court said basically, you know, DACA was not created by Congress. It was created by President Obama by executive order. And one president's executive order can be overturned by another president's executive order. The problem is you got to fill out the paperwork right, basically. And here's how you fill out the paperwork right. And so everybody's saying, oh, it's a great victory for you know, young people and for DACA recipients, basically. What we don't know yet, and we probably won't know for a day or so until the lawyers have really dug into this deeply, is whether Trump will be able to now follow the roadmap that the Supreme Court laid out to correctly overturn a Trump executive order between now and January, when a new president might get sworn in. And I'm betting he will be able to, but we'll see. Forgive me for being a little cynical on that. But anyhow, so that's going on. And I guess that, you know, that's pretty much my take on that. And I think, you know, we all need to keep an eye on it because, you know, I mean, these are children who, through no fault of their own, you know, came to this country and now they think, you know, I mean, they grew up here. This is their country. But anyway, in our second hour, Professor Richard Wolff is going to drop by, the economist, professor of economics. We're going to talk about the Fed and its corporate bond buying program, the legality of that, and what does it mean? I mean, basically what's happening is the Fed is orchestrating a rich person's recovery, while Trump is supervising a poor person's collapse. And I'm going to get into that more in just a moment. But Professor Richard Wolff will be with us in the second hour. In our third hour, Steve Benen has a new book he's out called Imposters, about the Republican Party. He's basically saying, I believe, what I've been saying now for the better part of 20 years, which is that the Republican Party ceased to be an all-American political party in the 1980s with the election of Ronald Reagan and began to be simply the party of the international oligarch class, which I'm going to get into in just a second. But anyhow, he's got this new book out. We're going to talk with him. And Senator Tammy Duckworth is here on both policing, the issue of policing, militarizing our cops, and also Donald Trump's use of the military. So that's our day. So to start, and in the second block of this hour, I want to get into a rant about serial killers and police. But so let's start with trade and Trump, and this seeming mystery. And this is not getting the headline treatment that I think, frankly, it should. It's a story that you'll find in the top 15 stories on most websites, but I don't think people are really understanding the story behind the story. You will recall, and I've talked about this many, many times on this program over the years, how back in 1791, during the George Washington administration, Washington went to Alexander Hamilton and said, okay, we got a country, we've got a constitution, how do we turn this into a prosperous country? And it took Hamilton 2 years. And in 1793, well, actually, I'm sorry, I got it back. It did take him 2 years. Washington gave him that commission in 1789. In 1791, Hamilton brought forward his work, his masterpiece. It was an 11-point plan called, Alexander Hamilton's Report on Manufactures. You can Google it. In fact, if you Google it with my name, you'll find a number of articles and a book I wrote about it. And it took Washington about 2 years, but by 1793, we had 30% tariffs on imported goods. We were subsidizing American manufacturers. We were making it very, very difficult for, the export of American raw materials. Very easy to import raw materials into the United States. So it was basically, like I said, an 11-point program. We've talked about it many times over the years on this program. And it stood until the Reagan administration. And it turned America into the industrial powerhouse of the world. And then, Nixon opened us to China, but Reagan really kicked the door open in a big way. Not only China, but also Reagan and Bush negotiated NAFTA. Bill Clinton signed it, but it was a Republican thing all along. So what happened, what's in the news this morning, is that Trump's trade guy, Peter Navarro, proposed that America should spend roughly $2 trillion to basically bring all our factories back home from China. And Mexico and Vietnam and pretty much every place else. But this would be a $2 trillion project. It would be massive. It would be successful. It would strengthen America's national security. Right now we can't build a cruise missile without chips we get from China. It would strengthen our domestic security. It would rebuild the American middle class. It would create an explosion in what could be very good paying jobs for American workers, what could be unionized jobs. And while all this seems to be exactly what Donald Trump campaigned on, it turns out his administration is opposed to it, which has everybody scratching their heads. Why would Trump tell Americans over and over and over again for 5 years that he wants to bring jobs home and then reject a reasonable effort to do that? Why? Is it because offshoring American jobs was always a Republican thing? As I mentioned, Nixon opened us up to China. Reagan and Bush negotiated NAFTA. The principal opposition to NAFTA was Democrats, people like Sherrod Brown and Bernie Sanders. Is that why? Is Trump just returning to Republican orthodoxy? Or is there some other reason why he doesn't want to do anything genuinely proactive about bringing jobs back to America? And if so, what could it be? Well, we get a clue in John Bolton's book. Seriously, it just puts it all in context. Consider Trump's opposition to bringing manufacturing jobs home on the one hand, and his request of President Xi of China that Xi help him get reelected in 2020, the same way he asked Putin to help him get reelected in 2016. Except the only difference is that when he asked Putin to help him get reelected, when he asked President Putin to help him, he did it in public. He said, Russia, if you're listening, we'd love to get those Hillary emails. And literally within hours, the servers got hacked and the emails, got leaked through WikiLeaks and all that kind of stuff. So Trump publicly asked Russia to help him, but it turns out he privately asked China to. And this is in John Bolton's new book. So he's
hoping now, and it's fairly obvious, Trump is hoping that China will do this year what Russia did 4 years ago, mobilize their vast and extraordinarily competent and sophisticated internet capabilities and their economic power. China can do this even better than Russia. I mean, Russia wasn't going to buy $1 trillion worth of our exports. China can. China's got a much larger economy than Russia. So Donald Trump is basically saying to China, help me get reelected. You know, have a massive presence on the internet to trash Biden and help me, and buy a bunch of stuff from American farmers and things. And so that, you know, therefore he's unwilling to risk upsetting China. And in fact, let me put a punctuation mark on this. Huawei, the Chinese telecom manufacturer, the Trump administration has been resisting letting Huawei into the United States because basically they seem to be a spying arm of the Chinese military. Well, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday, we had this total national brownout of T-Mobile for like a whole day. It should have been top headline all over the country. Well, that night, at the end of the day, around 6 p.m. that night, the Trump administration said, yeah, we'll let Huawei in. You think there's a link between the two? I mean, Trump is not only betraying our country and the values that underpin a democratic republic, but he's doing it to get reelected.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
This is craven, it's cowardly, and frankly, it's nothing short of treason. We'll be back. And welcome back. I just find this, pretty mind-boggling. This whole thing, and the idea that the Donald Trump, who has, basically made his career talking about trade, talking about free trade this, free trade that. It's free trade is terrible, a position that the Democratic Party has held forever. Right, the whole, free trade position. I mean, Trump has been trashing free trade. Democrats have been trashing free trade. Let's keep in mind, up until he declared that he was running for president of the United States, Donald Trump had been a Democrat. It was during his campaign that his daughter and his sons changed their registration from Democratic to Republican. He knew the Democratic position on trade. He knew very well that the Republican position on free trade was what had gutted trade in the United States. Now, granted, Clinton adopted that. I'll give you that. But it was the Republican position. Just like ending welfare as we know it was the Republican position. Yes, Clinton adopted that too. I think we can all agree the Bill Clinton presidency, had some good things to it, but by and large was a disaster, at least for the American people. And we should learn from that. Anyhow, Susan in Phoenix. Hey, Susan, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Yes, I'm just responding to some of the things you just said. And when you said that President Trump had secretly asked China to help him in the election. Well, if it's secret, isn't that considered a conspiracy? And then if it's a conspiracy, isn't it treasonous? And is the only way to hold them accountable is impeachment when somebody's outrightly treasonous against us American people? Thank you.
There are only two options, according to the Department of Justice in this memo that was written back during the Nixon time and then revalidated during the Clinton impeachment hearings. Both times when presidents were accused of wrongdoing, the Department of Justice said you can't investigate a president, you can't charge a president with a crime, because the Constitution provides for impeachment, and that's the only way you can hold a president accountable. And of course, there's the second way, which is going to happen on November 3rd, when we can flush this guy. That's basically it. Is impeachment, which is not going to happen again, tragically. I think it should. Or, vote him out. And my concern, Susan, is how much damage this guy can do between now and January 20th, when, hopefully Joe Biden
assuming that Biden, is our nominee, and I think it's a fairly safe assumption now, gets inaugurated.
Well, what about is it something you call treason though?
Well, I'm calling it treason. I think that at the very least it's betrayal. And betrayal on a massive scale. It's betrayal of American working people after he has positioned himself. I mean, the core of his campaign, even the Mexican rapists are coming part of the core of his campaign was, we've been offshoring jobs. Those jobs went to Mexico. You've got Mexicans who are coming to take your job. Oh my God, oh my God. So it's always been about jobs. And, clearly it's just BS. Susan, thank you for the call. Spot on. Yes, it's treason. We'll be back. It's 20 minutes past the hour. Coming up on that, we'll be back with my thoughts on killer cops right after this. Stick around.
Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. So back in 2016, the election year, Donald Trump was not yet president. He was just running a scam university, Trump University. That year, and Barack Obama was president, that year, Corinthian Colleges and ITT Technical Institute, two scam for-profit colleges, went out of business and ended up leaving thousands, maybe tens of thousands of students just basically screwed. No degree, no job, and massive amounts of student debt. So President Obama and the Secretary of Education put together this plan. It's called the Borrower Defense Rule that said that if somebody got ripped off by one of these for-profit colleges, they didn't have to pay back the debt. If it was student debt that was issued by the federal government, we would just eat it as a country. They were the victims of fraud. Well, it turns out Betsy DeVos had other ideas. She came into office, of course, just months afterwards as Donald Trump was sworn into office, and she's been fighting it all the way. You can check the whole thing out over at thomhartmann.com and our new video for supporters of our program.
Okay, my rant number 2 for the day is about killer cops, and I'm serious about this. I think that there's a dimension of this situation with policing in America that we have been overlooking and that we need to start taking very seriously. The story has now come out that as Rayshard Brooks lay on the pavement with 2 bullets in his back, one of the cops came over and kicked him and said, "I got him." And the second cop came over and put his foot on Rayshard Brooks' shoulder while he was struggling in the last moments of his life as he was bleeding out. Like a trophy hunter. "I bagged one." First guy says, "I got him." Second guy puts his foot on Brooks' shoulder. How is this not the behavior of killers? And I don't mean garden variety killers. I mean, I think, they stood there 2 minutes, 12 seconds, picked up their brass, kicked him, "I got him," put your foot on the shoulder, had their little trophy moment, and then after 2 minutes and 12 seconds decided to dial 911 and say, we probably should have an ambulance here. So what does this tell us? I think, frankly, that there are killers walking among us. There are people who actually, and just consider this in the abstract for a moment, that in any population, whether it's the American population, the Norwegian population, the Nigerian population, the New Zealand population, pick your population, right? The Taiwanese population. In any population, there is a very, very, very tiny sliver of the population who enjoy killing other human beings. We call them serial killers. We make television programs about them. We make movies about them. Remember Silence of the Lambs? But not just that. I mean, there's probably 1,000 movies out there about serial killers. There are entire TV shows, the CIS movies and all the cop shows. The serial killers are always the number one thing. There are killers who walk among us. And when those killers need to make a living, the high-functioning ones, the ones who can actually work in the job force and not be noticed as killers, when they need to make a living, what kind of job do they go for? I think some of them join the military in the hopes of going into combat and killing people. And I think that those were, frankly, those Navy SEAL guys that Donald Trump pardoned. They were killing people for fun with trophies. And I think some of them go into the police. I believe, and I realize this may sound very controversial, at least for people who always wanted to believe in their police departments. I believe that in probably many, if not most of our police departments, the large city police departments, because again, this is a very tiny, this isn't even 1% of the population. This is like 1/1000% of the population. But if you've got a police department with 10, 20,000 people in it, I would say you almost certainly have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 maybe of these kind of people. People who are killers. And I mean that not in the good sense of the word, it's bizarre that even in our society, like Donald Trump saying, these banksters are killers, right? They're like, as if it's a good thing. No. I think that we have a problem. And I think, frankly, that the other cops around them know who the killers are and are simply afraid of them. They're terrified of them. They don't want to be killed by them. Did you notice how the second cop in Atlanta, the one who didn't shoot the gun that killed Mr. Brooks, Rayshard Brooks, the one who didn't shoot the gun, it was first reported by CNN that he was cooperating with the police. In fact, it was reported by the district attorney. And his lawyer came out and said, oh, no, he's cooperating with the prosecutors. And his lawyer came out and said, oh, no, he's not cooperating with the prosecutors, which is his way of saying to the other police officers, don't kill my client. I mean, look at Serpico. Look at all these shows about, when a cop finally stands up and speaks out about the killers in the police department, suddenly the killers in the police department try to kill the cop. And thus, in Atlanta now, we've got a blue flu, where the police are calling in sick, or at least some of the police are calling in sick, in protest of the prosecution of these two cops who murdered Rayshard Brooks. I think either these are other cops who are also killers, or they're scared to death. And every single cop who calls in sick today in Atlanta should be seriously, carefully, and thoughtfully investigated. With that in mind.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
So what do you think about my hypothesis? I've never seen a book about this. I've never even, frankly, seen an article about it. But it seems just like common sense to me. What do you think? It's, what is it, Thursday? Yeah, it's Thursday here at Free Speech TV. And it's our next pet day. This is Ketty. Ketty was named after the movie about cats in Turkey. And if you haven't seen that movie, it's really worth the effort. He's kind of a mutt cat. He's got some Bengal and what else in him? He's mostly Bengal, but and he is crazy. He's 2 years old, crazy enthusiastic. This is the cat that we put on the TV screen I've got a monitor downstairs where we put videos of birds and mice and things, and he stares at it for hours. He is such a hunter. So anyhow, that's mostly Louisa's cat, Ketty. You can call Free Speech TV right now and make your contribution and vote for the cat or dog of your choice. Today is a special day on Free Speech TV because we have a match. This is no doubt will be the last one of this pledge drive, which is only going to last through tomorrow, through Friday. But the match is just today, and it's a $12,000 match. Your gift will be doubled up to $12,000. A bunch of people got together to make this happen. This is just a spectacular effort. It really shows you, how people care about this program and people care about this network. Charles and Carla, Tom, Jeff, Abby and Mary in California, Suzanne in Virginia, Christina in Maryland, Ed and June in Oregon, Helen in Washington, Jim in North Carolina, Mac in Colorado. Mac's visited us a couple times here. He's become a friend. I mean, he's a fascinating guy. BJ in Texas. Several of these people, I'm recognizing these names. I know a couple of you have visited us. Many of you have contributed before to things like these matches, and it's just so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for offering this match so that everybody who calls right now, 877-378-8669, will have their gift doubled. Ketty, by the way, sleeps in the weirdest positions. He sleeps in postures that make you think he's dead. I was just like this. It's just incredible. Anyhow, vote for the cat of your choice, right? Fang is still my cat. I mean, he reminds me of Higgins. Higgins was a rescue cat too, who was just very, very vicious. We got Higgins from our son, and then, after Higgins died, well, not after he died, but before he died. But anyway, we got Fang from my brother. Anyhow, here are the premiums. The Thom Hartmann University. Sorry, I shouldn't be smiling too much because this is serious stuff. We're not hitting our goals, and hopefully this match will help us get there. But if you have not yet called and made a contribution to Free Speech TV, do it now, please. 877-378-8669. Please call now. With a $20 gift, you have your choice: the Thom Hartmann University, proud student Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the brand new all-inclusive LGBTQ plus pride sticker. That's with a $20 gift. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the Just Effing Vote tote bag or the Free Speech TV webcam cover. With a $75 gift, you get the official Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $100 gift, you get a couple of Free Speech TV face masks. With a $120 gift, there's a whole bunch of goodies. You get your choice of one of these things with a $120 gift, and that would be my newest book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, American Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, autographed by the author, or The Hidden History of the War on Voting, autographed by the author, or the Social Distancing Kit, 2 Free Speech TV face masks and a hand sanitizer, the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or your choice of one of these 4 books on race that are really remarkable books: Michelle Alexander's classic, The New Jim Crow, Robin DiAngelo's classic, White Fragility, Dear White America by Tim Wise, and Uprooting Racism by Paul Kivel. With a $240 gift, we'll all get together on Zoom or Skype or whatever it is that we use and have a private 1-hour conversation. You and me and half a dozen other people, more or less. With a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University box with 2 Free Speech TV face masks, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, and the Just Effing Vote t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland here and hang out in the third hour of our show with Sean and me and Joyce. And sometimes Louise drops by. But that's going to probably be a year down the road. But you can reserve your place in line, and if you can afford a $1,000 gift, you also have our eternal thanks. Because the bottom line is, without your help, we don't have a television network. It's just that simple. And we need your help. We have 2 days left, today and tomorrow, in this fund drive, and we are behind, and we need your help. So please call now, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution, but do it now. Do it during our program, please. 877-378-8669. Coming up on the Science Revolution, biodiversity is dying as Trump opens 5,000 square miles of the ocean to the free market. Dr. Lauren Waller joins us to discuss how and why native plants can sequester carbon better and longer. Plus, Jim Adams from the Alaska National Parks Conservation Association is here on why Trump is allowing hunters to kill bear cubs in their dens. Are big game hunters like Don Jr. gleefully heading to Alaska to kill baby animals again? And cultural economist Dr. Jacobo Williams talks about how studies show black deaths at the hands of law enforcement are linked to historical lynchings. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever you find great podcasts. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Boy, this, I was just looking at my Twitter feed here, a number of people saying, yeah, you know, it makes perfect sense that, you know, that would happen. You know, people go into professions that kind of match their desires, the things that they like to do, the things that they want to do. So if you have a profession where you can legally kill people and you like to kill people, wouldn't you go into that profession, whether it's joining the infantry or whether it's joining the police department? I don't know. It's, I think, you know, well, let's see what you have to say. Dale in Pensacola, Florida. Hey, Dale, what's on your mind? Dale, you're on the air. Listening on Sirius XM? I think Dale is listening to his radio instead of his phone. He's on line 2, Joyce, if you want to figure out what's going on there. Edward in San Antonio, Texas. Hey, Edward, what's up?
Oh, hello. So how you doing, Tom? I'd just like to say that I agree with you 100%. I had recently retired from police department, but I've also had a 25-year career with the military, as well as 25 years on the department. And normally you have those aggressive, psychopath, homicidal type attitude personalities there. Usually they go into crime like hitmen, stuff like that. But you have those that will go into the military, join into the infantry, get on the more frontline units. And then you have those that will come into the police department and get onto the SWAT team and brag about and talk about how they would, you know, shoot someone or have to, you know, I guess you say,
take them down.
They take out the threat, the threat. The transition from going from a warrior to a guardian mentality is going to be much difficult than many realize, because a good percentage of your police officers have prior military experience. And with that military, you get that quote-unquote discipline, but you also get that aggressive, when we go to war, it's us against them. And usually them are minorities or those lower socioeconomic.
Foreign minorities. Yeah, exactly. Yes. And now in our cities, it's minorities. Edward, 25 years in the military, former police officer. Back in the 70s, I had a friend who got drafted, went to Vietnam. When he came back, a bunch of us one evening were sitting around talking, and he was telling us about this one guy in his, I think it was called a unit, or squad, whatever it is, small group, people who were like going through the jungle, clearing the jungle. And he said this guy was just so excited about having an opportunity to kill Vietnamese. He was just so excited about it. He loved it. And this guy was, my friend was telling us this story, and it was kind of in the context of, some of us were horrified by it. Some of us just figured, okay, good, he's going to kill as many of them as possible, so we're less likely to die. But everybody kind of had an opinion about this guy, but it was clear that he really enjoyed killing. Is that the exception? I mean, obviously, the vast majority of people who go into the military and into policing aren't like that. But how common is that kind of thing? Or have you not even encountered that in your career in both the military and the police, Edward?
I came across those. It's not as common, depending on what unit you're with. If you're on a front line combat unit, you're going to get that more aggressive personality. And I must say, the most police officers are going to also be there to make a difference. But you do have those that do sneak in. I think we have to address these psychological aspect of recruiting, because many of those believe that if you don't look like them, or you don't think like them in a way, you might be a threat to the order of how things are run. But I would say 99%. I'd say it's about good 80-90% of police officers want to come in, they want to do the job well. But it's those that I'd say 5 or 10% that when they come in, they know the system. They get in a good buddy system. If your supervisor like you, can't do wrong. If your supervisor do not like you, you cannot do right. That's just how that is.
Yeah.
And
well, it's like, at Michigan State University, the guy who was the doctor for the gymnasts turned out to be, just a over the top pervert. It was just, molesting all these women. He went into that job to have access to them. I mean, there are these kinds of positions, and policing for somebody who likes to kill, the military for somebody who likes to kill. Edward, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I appreciate it. It's nice to hear from you. Michelle in Denver. Hey, Michelle, what's up?
Yeah, we know what this is. Black people, every time we take 10 steps forward, this is something that's always existed in our fight and struggle for equality. It's a dog whistle. These guys are out in the open now. Trump has allowed them to be out in the open along with the GOP. It's a way to continue to oppress us. And what other communities need to do is see it for what it is and call it out and do something about it. We're sick and tired of fighting this fight. We're tired. Why do we have to continue to do it? Why do we have to continue to point it out to people that we just want to live? We deserve the right to live. We deserve the right to be. We've earned our full citizenship in this country. We've given blood, sweat, and tears. We fought in our own civil war, for heaven's sake. We fight in the military now, and we're still unequal in this country. It's absolutely sickening and disgusting. We're afraid to leave our homes. We tell our children to put their hands up, for heaven's sake, do whatever is necessary. And that young man that was shot was afraid. He was literally afraid for his life, because that's the fear that's been instilled in us for 400 years. It has to stop now. We're the minority. We can't keep fighting this fight anymore. We can't. We need the help. And these young people understand we've been doing this for 400 years, so settle in, because this is not going to get resolved overnight. It's not. We know how hard it's been to do this, to have this struggle. And we're tired of fighting this fight. I'm sitting here doing a timeline of our history for work, and just the amazing things that have been done over time. That's not even in the history books. I demand that it be put in there. I demand that we have people in there that have been in the struggle, other than Dr. King and Medgar Evers and Malcolm X. There's plenty of more people that have participated in this movement. There's plenty of people that have invented things in this country that have brought America value, but yet we're still devalued. We are still devalued in this country, and you want us to fly this flag? No, I'm not flying a flag that doesn't respect my rights. I'm not. I'm flying the Colorado flag because I refuse to fly a flag. Yes, I'll kneel because I'm tired of being oppressed. I'm 52 and I'm tired, and I can't imagine other people that are tired. I'm black and white. My mother was told they only had a choice of 3 military bases when my dad brought her back to this country in how racist we are. Colorado was one of the only bases that would accept us. There was only 2 others. This has to stop. We contribute. We're tax-paying citizens, and somebody needs to tell Trump to shut the hell up. Shut up. Shut up and stop tormenting us. And stop inciting this. It cannot keep going on like this. It can't. Just understand we're tired and we're frustrated, and we don't know how to end this anymore, and we need the help. We need the help. I'm tired of crying and wondering about my niece and nephews if they're going to have a future. I'm tired of it. For any of us. This can't be how we continue to do things in this country. Pay us equally, give us full citizenship, and yes, reparations, because we deserve it. 6 to 7 million slaves came over in this country. 6 to 7 million. And what have we gotten for all our hard work? We don't get to vote. You suppress that.
Michelle, thank you so much.
We don't get equality, nothing in this country.
Hopefully, many people heard your cry, and hopefully it'll go really far, because I think the country's waking up, but we have a hell of a long way to go. Michelle, God bless you. Thank you so much.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Donald Trump, by the way, published today in the Wall Street Journal, said he's responsible for everybody learning about Juneteenth. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Remarkable. Kenyatta in Los Angeles. Hey, Kenyatta. What's up?
Wow. I was just listening to Michelle.
Yeah, me too.
And, man. Wow. I actually, I had called to talk about, you had made such a salient point about how there are killers among us, and many of them wear uniforms. And you and I have had that, variations on that discussion many times. And it made me want to bring up the case of Chris Dorner. You may recall 7 years ago in Los Angeles, he was an LAPD officer who had seen an injustice that was racially motivated. And he went to IA, Internal Affairs, and he was blackballed out of that department. And I use the term blackball specifically and for a reason. And he just lost it. He lost it. He lost it because if you go to report these injustices and you are an officer, you got a target on your back. And police officers have ways of getting back at each other. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I don't recall the story of Chris Dorner, and I'm guessing a lot of our listeners don't. If you want to fill in a little more detail, what happened to him?
Chris Dorner was a black LAPD officer in February of 2013 who he had witnessed a black suspect being mistreated because, we hear about the shootings and all that, but there's a lot of soft abuse by police. You may recall just a few years ago, there was a 16-year-old girl that was slammed down by a school police officer somewhere in Carolina somewhere. So that stuff happens every day. But anyways, he had seen this, and this person was brutalized, and he went to IA. He went to Internal Affairs. Mm-hmm. And when he did that, they started to go after him and his family, and he was demoted and all kinds of things, and he just lost it. And that day, he went on a killing spree, and he went specifically after members of the department and their relatives. He killed 4 or 5 people. I can't remember the exact numbers, Tom. But the irony, And this is what you just heard from Michelle. You see, and I keep hearing, and I understand when I hear people talk about other groups of people that have been marginalized in this society, but no one came the way that black people did. No one was named property. We have names. You've heard the term mulatto, quadroon, quintroon, octoroon. Those things are all, this thing is so deep. But anyways, back to Chris Dorner. The day that he had gone on a killing spree for a couple of days, they were looking for him everywhere. You've been in Southern California, Tom, and that particular day, I had a business meeting at LAX, and I met with the person. I was on my way. It's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I was on my way back to towards Loma Linda. You've been to the hospital. I'm sorry. Anyways, this is a serious issue. And the guy in Atlanta, the big problem there, Tom, the reason they killed that guy was because the last thing you want as a cop is your weapon taken. And that was an ego trip.
Yeah, there you go. Kenyatta, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your authoritative response. We're building a series of books about the hidden history of America, starting with the hidden history of guns and the Second Amendment, then the hidden history of the Supreme Court and the betrayal of America, then the hidden history of the war on voting, now the hidden history of monopolies and how big business destroyed the American dream, and then next spring will be the hidden history of oligarchy. You can find them all wherever fine books are available. So every 5 years, the U.S. Department of Agriculture comes out with new guidelines, and we just put up a video over at ThomHartmann.com for supporters of our program that talks about how the Trump administration, in this insanely corrupt deal with the $100 billion industry of ultra-processed, high-sugar, high-salt, high-fat foods that is literally killing 700,000 Americans a year, has said, oh, we're going to change the guidelines so that these fast food, high-processed food companies can shovel their stuff into our school lunch programs, into our kids. We're going to change the guidelines so people aren't informed about the importance of, dialing back somewhat on meat and on salt and sugar and all these other things. It's nuts. You can check the whole thing out over at ThomHartmann.com. Look for the video for our, the supporters of our program at ThomHartmann.com. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And John in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, John, what's up?
Hey, check out the list of decertified officers. It's a nationwide list that Gannett, USA
Yeah, I mentioned
Today
that yesterday. You're talking... Yeah, I mentioned that yesterday. Gannett pulled this thing together, and it's over on the USA Today website. And I was able to pull up Oregon, and see all the, there's 5 pages of them, of officers.
So I found one that...
Go ahead.
I found one here in New Mexico that was still working, even though he'd been decertified 5 years ago. So everybody get your local sheriff's department, get the roster, look up their names, get the police departments.
Yeah,
because they're out there. They're still working.
Yep, it's over at USA Today's website, and if it's not easy to find, it should be fairly easy to Google. This list of police. Thank you, John. Good to hear from you, Chaz in Lakewood, Washington. Hey, Chaz, what's up?
Nazadrovia, comrade. A little more of a serious subject, so I hope I might get a little more time than I normally request here. Michelle's plight just destroys me, and I hope Nate will make that one of your YouTube offerings. People may not be aware that they do have a certain degree of control. I mean, it could be as simple as attending a city council meeting, and once the COVID thaw breaks, they could attend, but until then, it's still possible to submit comments to their city clerk. Also, there are advisory... Yes, sir. And there medium and large-sized cities have advisory boards that typically regard safety or police conduct that they could look into. Those are manned typically by citizens, and we'll be looking for folks who have some tertiary or secondary experience in that area. But finally, here's the part that's a little bit delicate. requested the jacket of an officer who was implicated in a questionable shooting here in my city. And I requested that about a month ago. And since they haven't said no yet, I'm guessing they're going through and redacting stuff in his jacket so that I can submit it. I warned them this might end up being a story in our local online newspaper.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, step by step. Chaz, thank you. Martha in Rutherford-Fordton, North Carolina. Am I saying that right, Martha?
Yes. I just wanted to say something to go along with Michelle. I feel like we as a race are under attack. It's been hidden a long time. There's a lot of pent-up hatred. And I was watching the news, and I saw in Bethel, Ohio, where the Trump Riders for Trump rode into this peaceful demonstration for Black Lives Matter and started throwing and hitting and intimidating people with guns, and these were mostly white people. So I know if they attack them, they just soon kill us as to look at us. And we can't depend on the police because the police were standing there looking at us.
Yeah, just like they did in Charlottesville.
Yes, just like they did in Charlottesville. So we don't, and we don't have a whole lot of assault weapons. We try to be law-abiding citizens. We have guns to protect our homes, but we don't have assault weapons.
Yeah.
And I'm just concerned, not for me as much as I am for my grandchildren.
Yep.
I have 4 grandboys, and I'm very concerned about if we don't get Donald Trump out, he's going to destroy the whole world, I believe.
Yeah.
And I'm really upset. I'm really upset and concerned when I see my people on television taking up for him. Not that they are Republicans, because I have Republicans in my family who said if they had to vote for Donald Trump, they wouldn't vote. So what they did was voted for, what's her name, Jill Stein, which was like throwing their vote away, I tried to tell them. And it's not that they are Republicans. It's just that they support Donald Trump, and I can't see why.
Yeah.
And I'm like Michelle. I'm like Michelle. What's going to happen to us? Are we going to become annihilated, or what's going to happen?
I believe, Martha, the tide is turning. Joe Madison and I were talking about this a couple days ago. Is this a movement or a moment? And I think we're way past the moment, and we're into movement here. I think that change is happening. But Jesus, 400 years, after 400 years, we're finally getting some change. Forgive my obscenity there, but, taking the
and the people in power don't give up easy. I know that from growing up in the 60s and 70s. They don't give up easy.
You're right. Yeah. Power is almost never ceded, given up. It is almost always taken. It has to be taken.
Right.
And that's what we have to do in November is, we have to take power
if
back.
If you can get them out to vote. We are trying hard to get these, especially young people, to vote.
Yep. And now Georgia announces that they're not going to send out applications for absentee ballots because too many people voted by mail in Georgia. It's crazy. So they're going to try and make it harder to vote there, too. Martha, thank you.
Tom.
Thank you for the call.
We appreciate you.
Yep. Thank you. Back at you, Martha. Thank you so much for the call. It's nice to hear from you. And thank you for watching us there in North Carolina. We'll be right back, hitting the top of the hour. I want to get into, we've got so much more to talk about. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
So we've got a new video up over at thomhartmann.com for people who support our program, and there's a really troubling concatenation of events, events, that are happening in the United States right now. We created these concentration camps for refugees seeking asylum. This was Stephen Miller's big project. And we've got concentration camps for children, concentration camps for male adults, concentration camps for female adults. And now we've got this virus sweeping through the United States, and people are starting to die in these concentration camps, which has provoked ICE or whoever's running them to deport hundreds of the children back to the countries that they came from without their parents, which is mind-boggling, and in many cases carrying disease. This is serious stuff, and we need to be talking about it. The new video is over at thomhartmann.com. It's, what is it, Thursday? Yeah, it's Thursday here at Free Speech TV, and it's our next pet day. This is Ketty. Ketty was named after the movie about cats in Turkey, and if you haven't seen that movie, it's really worth the effort. He's kind of a mutt cat. He's got some Bengal and what else in him? He's mostly Bengal, but and he is crazy. He's 2 years old, crazy enthusiastic. This is the cat that we put on the TV screen. I've got a monitor downstairs where we put videos of birds and mice and things, and he stares at it for hours. He is such a hunter. So anyhow, that's mostly Louisa's cat, Ketty. You can call Free Speech TV right now and make your contribution and vote for the cat or dog of your choice. Today is a special day on Free Speech TV because we have a match. This is no doubt will be the last one of this pledge drive, which is only going to last through tomorrow, through Friday. But the match is just today, and it's a $12,000 match. Your gift will be doubled up to $12,000. A bunch of people got together to make this happen. This is just a spectacular effort. It really shows you, how people care about this program and people care about this network. Charles and Carla, Tom, Jeff, Abby and Mary in California, Suzanne in Virginia, Christina in Maryland, Ed and June in Oregon, Helen in Washington, Jim in North Carolina, Mac in Colorado. Mac's visited us a couple times here. He's become a friend. I mean, he's a fascinating guy. BJ in Texas. Several of these people, I'm recognizing these names. I know a couple of you have visited us. Many of you have contributed before to things like these matches, and it's just so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for offering this match so that everybody who calls right now, 877-378-8669, will have their gift doubled. Ketty, by the way, sleeps in the weirdest positions. He sleeps in postures that make you think he's dead. I was just like this. It's just incredible. Anyhow, vote for the cat of your choice, right? Fang is still my cat. I mean, he reminds me of Higgins. Higgins was a rescue cat too, who was just very, very vicious. We got Higgins from our son, and then, after Higgins died, well, not after he died, but before he died. But anyway, we got Fang from my brother. Anyhow, here are the premiums. The Thom Hartmann University. Sorry, I shouldn't be smiling too much because this is serious stuff. We're not hitting our goals, and hopefully this match will help us get there. But if you have not yet called and made a contribution to Free Speech TV, do it now, please. 877-378-8669. Please call now. With a $20 gift, you have your choice: the Thom Hartmann University proud student Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the brand new all-inclusive LGBTQ plus pride sticker. That's with a $20 gift. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the Just Effing Vote tote bag or the Free Speech TV webcam cover. With a $75 gift, you get the official Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $100 gift, you get a couple of Free Speech TV face masks. With a $120 gift, there's a whole bunch of goodies. You get your choice of one of these things with a $120 gift. And that would be my newest book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, American Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, autographed by the author, or The Hidden History of the War on Voting, autographed by the author, or The Social Distancing Kit, 2 Free Speech TV face masks and a hand sanitizer, the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or your choice of one of these 4 books on race that are really remarkable books. Michelle Alexander's classic, The New Jim Crow, Robin DiAngelo's classic, White Fragility, Dear White America by Tim Wise, and Uprooting Racism by Paul Kivel. With a $240 gift, we'll all get together on Zoom or Skype or whatever it is that we use and have a private 1-hour conversation. You and me and half a dozen other people, more or less. With a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University box with 2 Free Speech TV face masks, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, and the Just Effing Vote t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland here and hang out in the third hour of our show with Sean and me and Joyce, and sometimes Louise drops by. But that's going to probably be a year down the road. But you can reserve your place in line, and if you can afford a $1,000 gift, you also have our eternal thanks. Because the bottom line is, without your help, we don't have a television network. It's just that simple. And we need your help. We have 2 days left, today and tomorrow, on this fund drive, and we are behind. And we need your help. So please call now, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution. But do it now. Do it during our program, please. 877-378-8669. Rachel Herzing of the prison abolitionist group Critical Resistance defines it. And then she goes on through this. It's an extraordinary book. Locked Down, Locked Out by Maya Shen.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. On the line with us is Professor Richard Wolff, the economist, the co-founder of democracyatwork.info. And Democracy at Work, the organization. R.D. Wolff also is another of his websites with 2 F's on the end. He's the author of numerous books. His most recent, Understanding Socialism. You can tweet him at Prof. Wolff, as in Professor Wolff with 2 F's. Professor Wolff, welcome back. We've talked in the past about how the Fed was buying corporate bonds, but there was a piece in CNBC this week on the 15th, 3 days ago, suggesting that it's gone beyond just bailing out or just propping up, United Airlines or IBM or something, that they're actually now buying corporate bonds in the secondary market. And there are rumors that they're buying stock in that marketplace as well, in exchange traded funds, ETFs. What is the secondary market? What is the significance of this, or am I overly freaked out about nothing?
No, you're catching an important point that got very little attention, much less than it deserved. Okay, first the definitions. The Federal Reserve already, starting in the crash of 2008, got into the business of lending money directly to troubled corporations and taking in return IOUs that are called corporate bonds. So the Federal Reserve helped out a company by essentially lending it money and accepting its bonds. What this new development is different. It says that the Federal Reserve not only can do what I just said, but can do something different. It can go into the existing credit markets where companies have already issued bonds 1 year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it doesn't really matter, that were purchased by investors, banks, insurance companies, and others. And the people who lent that money to the corporations and got the bonds 1, 2, 5 years ago, can now turn around and sell those bonds to the Federal Reserve. In other words, all of the enormous outstanding debt of corporations exists in this thing called the secondary market. And the Federal Reserve has basically said, in addition to lending money directly to corporations for a particular loan, they will now backstop. They will become a buyer in the regular market that used to be a private market of private corporations lending money to one another. This will now become a market that the governmental apparatus of the Federal Reserve will step in to support. What it does, among other things, is to make the final humorous joke about those right-wingers, libertarians, conservative economists who like to talk about, quote-unquote, the free market. That was always a utopian delusion, but now with the Federal Reserve literally becoming another player in the private market, the only difference being it has the power to print the money it uses to buy things which nobody else can do, any claim that our economic system is somehow free or independent of government controls and manipulation is flat out just an untruth.
Now, one of the axioms of how markets work, it's usually applied to the stock market. I'm assuming, well, actually, this is my question: does this apply to the bond market as well? Is that the prices in a marketplace go up when the number of buyers exceed the number of sellers, and prices in a marketplace go down when the number of sellers exceeds the number of buyers. In other words, when more people want to sell, prices drop. When more people want to buy, prices go up. And so if the Fed jumps into this secondary bond market, which because these are corporate bonds is, I believe, one of the stilts that props up the stock market, because these same corporations are listed on the stock market. So if you're helping the corporation, you're going to help their stock price too. I would assume, I'm reality checking this with you, it seems to me that the Fed buying these bonds is going to be supportive of the corporate bond market, which is where your billionaires are invested. And of course, it helps the big corporations. And B, it's also going to have a knock-on effect in the stock market. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely. In fact, it is as bald as you want. No one can control whether the company, for example, I'll just pick one, General Motors, it issues a bond, it sells it to a bank, very typical. The bank now resells it to the Federal Reserve. The money that the General Motors borrowed, the General Motors can now use, for example, to buy its own shares in the stock market, which the executives are always incentivized to do because many of them have a contract that governs their salary and bonuses depending on how well their stock goes. So look at them now. They'll be in a position to borrow money, knowing that every bank and insurance companies will be happy to lend to them because those banks and insurance companies can turn around and resell the bond to the Federal Reserve now that it's in there, and the gleeful General Motors borrow up the wazoo in order then to buy shares of stock. So absolutely, credit markets, we say in economics, are interconnected. If the government comes in and supports and boosts one of them, it will spill over to the others. It's only a question of a little bit of time that it takes to work out the mechanisms, but the spillover always happens.
So, economists, and I mean, typically this has been a Republican talking point. Government shouldn't be involved in marketplaces, right?
Right.
Obviously, Republicans no longer believe in anything. In fact, we'll be talking to Steve Benen about that in the next hour. But is this something that is amenable? I mean, A, is this sustainable? And B, if it's not sustainable, how do we respond to this? I mean, is legislation necessary? Do we need to reverse Reagan's 1980s policy of allowing corporations to buy back their stock, to jack their stock prices? It seems like it's not just limited to that. Do we need to put further restraints on the Fed? How do we deal with this? Or what kind of threat does this represent? Or both?
I'm afraid at this point you really can't. It's too late. You've made the whole economic structure of the United States dependent on government support. We saw that in 2018 when the Fed decided it was time, having pumped so much money into the economy, to let interest rates rise. They did that, and in a matter of weeks, a couple of months, the stock market took such a dive that the Federal Reserve reversed itself and resumed what it calls quantitative easing, pumping more money into the economy, driving down interest rates. It's like asking, when will we get back to the normal level of interest rates, say in the 4 to 6% range? And right now, I think the only answer people like me can give, and most others, is we have no idea not only when that might happen, but we don't even know if it might happen, because you now have, and the metaphor I'm using is not excessive, you now have an addiction. The private enterprise fairy tale is now completely gone. Everything depends on the government coming in, more so in the last 10 weeks than I have ever seen in my life since the Great Depression. Massive government support across the board, and this is really only one small addition. Currently, it's being led by the same Republicans who used to tell you that the least government is the best. They are now the advocates of the exact opposite.
Amazing stuff. Professor Richard Wolff, I so appreciate you dropping by every week. I learned so much from you. I know our listeners do too. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. Glad to be here.
My pleasure. Great talking with you. We'll be right back. Professor Wolff, by the way, democracyatwork.info, rdwolf with 2fs.com is website, so you can tweet him at Prof. Wolff. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Is Donald Trump a porcelain doll? Are things changing really rapidly now? Let me tell you about my thoughts on this, and Jeff Tiedrich's as well. Stick around. And welcome back. Let's see here. James in Spokane, Washington. Hey, James, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Michelle, that's truly earthy and meaningless. Meaningful. You know, we're not going to have any equity in this country, Tom, until we end the war on drugs. You know, Nixon instituted it. It was a tool against the long-haired intellectuals and progressives and people, liberals at the time, wanting change. And that's
black people. I mean, you know, Ehrlichman was tracked down by a reporter back about 15, 20 years ago. It turns out he was working in an investment company in Boston. He had a beard down to the middle of his stomach. And the reporter started asking him questions about Nixon, and Ehrlichman just said, you know, let me just stop you right there. You know, we had two enemies back then in the 60s, the Nixon administration, the anti-war hippies and the blacks. Quoting John Ehrlichman here. And so what did we do? We criminalized drugs, hyper-criminalized them, knowing that we could use this to disrupt their communities because we couldn't make it illegal to be against the war or to be black. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, and anybody can look this quote up. But you know, it's like the guy who actually put the policy into place came out and said this. This was Richard Nixon's, I believe.
Until we changed that, personally in my life, as in so many people's lives, it almost destroyed my life. Almost went to prison, and my life would have ended. But, you know, it's just harmed so many people, and the machine keeps going on. And on top of that, reparations, 90% of the people in this country have been screwed at some point or the other. We need a universal basic income. That would be reparations in a stroke.
Yeah, well, there's reparations for African Americans who have historically been, you know, exploited and killed. I mean, just brutalized. And then there are, let's put our economy back together for everybody in the country. Let's return to common sense economic principles like John Maynard Keynes was teaching and Franklin Roosevelt put into place. But, you know, step by step. Dave in Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. Hey, Dave, what's on your mind today?
Well, I was just thinking, I was listening to your rant about the police and the
personality
culture.
Killers.
Yeah, the culture. And And I was just wondering, I think there's a higher percentage of sadistic people than we think in the police departments, especially the big city police departments. And I just wonder if there's a way to vet that before they get hired. Is a psychological test of some kind that can find that out?
There are some tests, Dave, like the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, the MMPI. The problem is that most sociopaths, most high-functioning sociopaths, know how to blow up a test like that. They know how to get past a test like that. Really what you need to do is create an institution where it's really hard to kill people, and then it's not going to attract those kind of people.
Well,
we need to.
Yeah, I'm for that. I'm actually.
Dave, thanks for the call. I think we fundamentally need to change policing in the United States, and if you make it so that people who love to kill people can't easily become, if you make it so that policing isn't a job where it's easy to kill people, then people who want to kill people won't go into policing. We'll be right back.
Our 1-hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3-hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. So we've got a new video up for regular supporters of our program over at thomhartmann.com, and this is about just a totally bizarre story about these 3 guys with no VA experience, not even veterans, who are all big shots down at Mar-a-Lago that Donald Trump has put in charge of the Veterans Administration functionally. And their association, one of them is the head of Marvel Entertainment, their association with Johnson & Johnson and the New York Stock Exchange, and Johnson & Johnson, the big drug company, taking this very, very cheap chemical, ketamine, tweaking the molecule a little bit, and rolling it out as a new anti-suicide drug, Spravato, that in clinical trials caused 6 people to die, 3 of them by suicide, and none of the people taking the placebo to die. And now Trump is telling the VA, you have to buy this highly inflated price drug from Johnson & Johnson, and the Democrats want to know what's up with the VA crowd guys. Check it out. It's at thomhartmann.com.
Okay, so we'll continue our conversation. We've got a lot on the table here right now. We're talking about Trump and his betrayal of American workers vis-a-vis China and the export of trade. We've got a conversation about killer cops and killers going into policing and into the military, what we can do about that. The point I made just a few minutes ago is that I think that if we were to genuinely reform policing in the United States so that it's actually very difficult for a police officer to kill someone, then there would be fewer people who want to kill people going into policing. And in fact, those may be the guys who are calling in sick right now in Atlanta. The ones who really enjoy beating people up and killing people, and they're pissed. So we've got that stuff on the table. Now, and then, Richard Wolff's economic stuff. If you want to talk about the Fed, you're welcome to call. I want to add something else to the mix. And in the next hour, I'm going to get into World War III. But right now, I want to talk about the scam that is the Trump presidency and the Republican Party. Very straightforward, just this absolute scam. The Horse Whisperer, H-O-A-R-S-E Whisperer, is a Twitter feed that I've been following for a long, long time. Nobody knows who this guy is, but he got some really spot-on tweets, and he's a very smart guy. And he wrote this piece, and it's being quoted today in the Washington Post. So I think it's this thread that he published on June 17th, yesterday. He says, narcissists build a fragile outer shell, but even they know it's not real. And it's their life's work to defend that shell. And they create this hypnotic bubble where the acolytes, the people who surround them, are kind of sucked into this belief system. He says it's like, and then there's other people who see these sociopaths like Trump for what they are. And those people, he says, it's like being the only person in the town who knows that the mayor is actually a rabid raccoon.
And people are running around going, oh, isn't the mayor wonderful? And you're standing going, no, he's a rabid raccoon. He's not really even a human. He's, you know. And the horse whisperer says, at some point, there will be an event. And most of us think that this is the accumulation of a whole bunch of events. But it's typically not. It's one thing. And it's a different thing for every person, which is why it seems like it's a whole bunch of events. But the way it works at the personal level, where the way that a single Trump follower wakes up and realizes that they are being had, that the Republican Party has been lying to them since 1981 with the so-called Reagan Revolution, that trickle-down economics is simply a way of making rich people richer and screwing working-class people, that destroying unions was a stupid idea from the working class's point of view, and taking us from 30%, 35% unionization to 6% unionization wiped out the middle class. The way that you get these Trump followers to realize that this is what's real, this is what's going on, is this one event thing. But you never know which event it's going to be for which Trump supporter. He compares Trump, he says the public is having an awakening, he says, but not Trump's diehards. And then something happens and it shatters the mystique. He says it's like dropping a porcelain doll. The narcissist's facade can never be put back together. It's shattered for eternity. The newly awakened people never go back to that hypnosis again. So what's it going to take to wake up the rest? You know, a bunch of Trump supporters have already woken up. I mean, you're seeing that in his collapsing approval ratings in the polls. So here's a few possibilities. I put these forward as candidates. An attorney representing, this is from lawandcrime.com, an attorney representing Fox News reportedly made an interrogative statement in federal court that directly called into question the news value of the number one host in all of cable news, Tucker Carlson. Fox News attorney Aaron Murphy asked a U.S. district judge, would a reasonable viewer be coming here thinking that this is where I'm going to be hearing the news of the day? Tucker Carlson had made this statement that Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal were, what he said, two women approached Donald Trump and threatened to ruin his career and humiliate his family if he didn't give them money. Now, that sounds like a classic case of extortion. This is Tucker Carlson. So basically what they're doing is they're arguing that Fox News doesn't have to tell the truth. It's people on TV don't have to tell the truth. And when they lie, they can't be held accountable, number one. Number two, this is new report from the IRS watchdog, the Inspector General for the IRS. The IRS is not auditing a large portion of wealthy individuals who haven't filed tax returns. Here's the actual number. From 2014 through 2018, this isn't just what Trump did to the IRS, this is what Bush did to the IRS. He laid off huge numbers of IRS employees. 879,415 high-income people during those 2 years didn't even bother to file a tax return. They owe $45.5 billion in taxes. The IRS did not even examine 42% of those cases. But the IRS is now auditing average working people like there's no tomorrow. Data point number two. Actually, I've got a couple more. I'll share them with you rather than trying to rush through them right now as we're hitting the break. I'll share them with you in a minute or two or three on the other side of this break, and then I'll pick up your phone calls on all these various things that we've laid on the table here today. Stick around. We'll be right back. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, your media support group for We the People.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Coming up on 28 minutes past the hour, back with your calls right after this. It's, what is it, Thursday? Yeah, it's Thursday here. Free Speech TV, and it's our next pet day. This is Ketty. Ketty was named after the movie about cats in Turkey, and if you haven't seen that movie, it's really worth the effort. He's kind of a mutt cat. He's got some Bengal and what else in him? He's mostly Bengal, but and he is crazy. He's 2 years old. Crazy enthusiastic. This is the cat that we put on the TV screen. I've got a monitor downstairs where we put
videos of birds and mice and things, and he stares at it for hours. He is such a hunter. So anyhow, that's mostly Louisa's cat, Ketty. You know, you can call Free Speech TV right now and make your contribution and vote for the cat or dog of your choice. Today is a special day on Free Speech TV because we have a match. This is no doubt will be the last one of this pledge drive, which is only going to last through tomorrow, through Friday. But the match is just today, and it's a $12,000 match. Your gift will be doubled up to $12,000. A bunch of people got together to make this happen. This is just, you know, just a spectacular effort. It really shows you, you know, how people care about this program and people care about this network. Charles and Carla, Tom, Jeff, Abby and Mary in California, Suzanne in Virginia, Christina in Maryland, Ed and June in Oregon, Helen in Washington, Jim in North Carolina, Mac in Colorado. Mac's visited us a couple times here. You know, he's become a friend. I mean, he's a fascinating guy. BJ in Texas. Several of these people, you know, I'm recognizing these names. I know a couple of you have visited us. Many of you have contributed before to things like these matches, and it's just so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for offering this match so that everybody who calls right now, 877-378-8669, will have their gift doubled. Ketty, by the way, sleeps in the weirdest positions. He sleeps in postures that make you think he's dead. I was just like this. It's just incredible. Anyhow, vote for the cat of your choice, right? You know, Fang is still my cat. I mean, he reminds me of Higgins. Higgins was a rescue cat too, who was just very, very vicious. We got Higgins from our son, and then, you know, after Higgins died, well, not after he died, but before he died. But anyway, we got Fang from my brother. Anyhow, here are the premiums. The Thom Hartmann University. Sorry, I shouldn't be smiling too much because this is serious stuff. We're not hitting our goals, and hopefully this match will help us get there. But if you have not yet called and made a contribution to Free Speech TV, do it now, please. 877-378-8669. Please call now. With a $20 gift, you have your choice: the Thom Hartmann University proud student Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the brand new all-inclusive LGBTQ plus pride sticker. That's with a $20 gift. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the Just Effing Vote tote bag or the Free Speech TV webcam cover. With a $75 gift, you get the official Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $100 gift, you get a couple of Free Speech TV face masks. With a $120 gift, there's a whole bunch of goodies. You get your choice of one of these things with a $120 gift. And that would be my newest book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, American Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, autographed by the author, or The Hidden History of the War on Voting, autographed by the author, or the Social Distancing Kit, 2 Free Speech TV face masks and a hand sanitizer, the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or your choice of one of these 4 books on race that are really remarkable books: Michelle Alexander's classic, The New Jim Crow, Robin DiAngelo's classic, White Fragility, Dear White America by Tim Wise, and Uprooting Racism by Paul Kivel. With a $240 gift, we'll all get together on Zoom or Skype or whatever it is that we use and have a private 1-hour conversation. You know, you and me and half a dozen other people, more or less. With a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University box with 2 Free Speech TV face masks, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, and the Just Effing Vote t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland here and hang out in the third hour of our show with Sean and me and Joyce. And sometimes Louise drops by. But that's going to probably be a year down the road. But you can reserve your place in line, and if you can afford a $1,000 gift, you also have our eternal thanks. Because the bottom line is, without your help, we don't have a television network. It's just that simple. And we need your help. We have 2 days left, today and tomorrow, in this fund drive, and we are behind, and we need your help. So please call now, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution, but do it now. Do it during our program, please. 877-378-8669.
And Ching.
Coming up on the Science Revolution, biodiversity is dying as Trump opens 5,000 square miles of the ocean to the free market. Dr. Lauren Waller joins us to discuss how and why native plants can sequester carbon better and longer. Plus, Jim Adams from the Alaska National Parks Conservation Association is here on why Trump is allowing hunters to kill bear cubs in their dens. Are big game hunters like Don Jr. gleefully heading to Alaska to kill baby animals again? And cultural economist Dr. Jacobo Williams talks about how studies show black deaths at the hands of law enforcement are linked to historical lynchings. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever you find great podcasts.
So we have a new video up over at thomhartmann.com for people who are signed up, for supporters of our program. And it's about how Donald Trump, 16 days after Mr. Khashoggi was murdered by the Saudis in Turkey and his body dismembered and vanished, 16 days after that happened, without notifying Congress and with virtually no mention to anybody, Donald Trump authorized the transfer of top secret nuclear technology to the Saudis. This should be a serious issue. Tim Kaine, the senator from Virginia, is raising hell about it because Khashoggi lived in Virginia. But I think everybody in Congress should be raising hell about this. And when you back this up with this new report out from ProPublica that the Saudis were involved in 9/11, it gets real interesting. So you can check that out over at thomhartmann.com. You know, look for our basically members-only video.
So just to finish up my rant, some of the other things that might be blowing up Donald Trump, in addition to things like his claiming today in the Wall Street Journal that he's the guy who told America about Juneteenth and all of this. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. His campaign during the Nazi times, the people who were arrested as communists, union organizers, anti-Nazi sympathizers, basically the left, had to wear an upside-down red triangle. And Trump is now using these in his ads. It's over in the Washington Post right now. It's kind of a visual thing. It's harder to describe on the radio, but check this out on the Washington Post. The symbology, the iconography of the Republican Party, absolutely bizarre. 20 years ago, when George W. Bush was elected president, they flipped the stars upside down on the GOP logo to move it from the Polar Star, the North Star, that the founders talked about, the North Star, literally talked about the Polar Star, the North Star, and being on our flag, the star with the five-pointed star with the point at the top, to flipping it upside down. So the point is at the bottom, the chin of the goat, the chinny chin chin, and then the two star points on the sides, which are the ears of the goat, and the 2 points on the top, which are the horns of the goat. So the Republican Party made it the satanic symbol 20 years ago. Now in their advertising, they're using the Nazi symbol for left-wingers when they talk about their opposition to left-wingers. Honest to God, not making this up. Similarly, we saw that, Trump kept stealing, apparently Kushner was in charge of this, kept stealing face masks and personal protective equipment and ventilators and things, shipments of these things going to blue states. Remember when they were trying to get to New York, they were trying to get to Chicago, you had Governor Pritzker in Illinois having to, call out the National Guard essentially to prevent Kushner and Trump from stealing their PPE for their hospitals. Same thing in New Jersey. The governor of New Jersey organized a shipment from South Korea and had to have it do it all in secret so that Trump couldn't steal it. It looks like that stuff has been stashed in the National Reserve to pass out to the red states when the coronavirus hits them, because it's now hitting them. So you got that. And then we've got the PPP loans, you know, the Paycheck Protection Program loans. Red states like South Dakota, Utah, Wyoming, Florida, and Nebraska saw a relatively small increase in their unemployment rate. South Dakota's unemployment rate only went up 4.6%. In Utah, it was 4.7%. This is on top of the existing rate, so it went up to like around 9%. Wyoming went up 5.2% over the existing rate, Florida 5.8%, Nebraska 5.8%. So all of them were under 6% over the existing rate. Who got the most PPP? South Dakota. Second most, Utah. Third most, Wyoming. Fourth most, Florida. Fifth most, Nebraska. All red states, all having, not that much impact, but they got most of the money. What states got the least amount of money? Well, how about Michigan? They saw their unemployment rate go up 21% over the existing norm. Huge, compared to South Dakota's 4%. South Dakota is number one in their ranking in the amount of PPP money they got. Michigan is number 46. They only got $18,000. The whole state. Hawaii only got $20,000. The whole state. Their unemployment's up 19% over the existing rate. New York State, the entire state, got $23,000 as a share of COVID-19 continuing jobless claimants. And their unemployment rate went up 17%. This, by the way, from the Axios Markets newsletter today. If you want to track down the numbers, you can find them. Meanwhile, the Republican Party they've sent out a call to pro-Trump doctors to come forward and talk about opening up quickly. This is exactly what the tobacco industry did back in the 70s and 80s and 60s even, where they brought doctors in to go on television and talk about how, smoking is good for you. It'll soothe your throat. And then the fossil fuel industry did in the 90s, the 2000s, bringing, in some cases, physicians, more often than not PhDs, but bringing people with doctor in front of their name in to talk about, there's no global warming, everything's good, don't worry. And now the Trump administration is trying to get doctors in on this. I mean, what's it going to take? What's it going to take to break this thing down? Anyhow, a lot on our plate today. Marie in Dallas, Texas. Marie, you are the winner of our 3-pack Face Tech masks. Face Tech masks are antimicrobial and antifungal. You go to facetekmask.com and save 20% off and receive priority shipping with the code Tom. Anyhow, Marie, welcome to the program. What's on your mind today? And just stay on hold, and and Joyce will get your information to send you some face masks if you'd like. What's up?
Hey, Tom. Thanks very much for your show. Thanks for your platform. I just want to appreciate you bringing up the subject of this whole police reform in the light of employment. As employers, I think that it is imperative for us to consider this dynamic as it relates to our ethics policies, our policies with regard to our culture and our environments. I find it very frightening that the unions, police unions, have grown so toxic when other unions have been virtually diminished. And their toxicity is such that it has mayors and chief of police afraid, to the point that this could even happen. Watching this dynamic over the last 2 weeks, the incident that happened with the one man who was in supervisory position, then through our whole nation, cities all over the country, all of the police departments and cities had to respond to this environment. Think of this in light of, if this is the Ford Motor House and one particular employee or couple of employees are going rogue and they decide to not follow protocol, not follow policies, not follow internal procedures, and then we start to have this reckless product that goes out on the line, or any other product that, is done. Employers must be considering this. Mayors and chiefs of police must get a hold of this. We cannot allow a toxic group to be so toxic that one of the young men who had just got on the job 2 days was out there, and he had the good sense to say, hey, something isn't right here. But he was so intimidated by the supervisor's position that he had to back down from what he even said. And not only was George Floyd's life lost and his family's destroyed, but this young man who had just been on the job 2 days, who was all excited about coming and serving his community, all excited about being a part of his community as the protective force, his whole family's life is now destroyed. There is a problem here, and as an employer, employers across the country should be outraged and standing up and saying, no, we will not allow this toxic culture to prevail, because if we do it in the police department, we'll have to look at it in our own individual departments, in our own businesses as well. So I really appreciate you bringing that dynamic and letting us mull through that and think about that as employers. And as an employee, I want the employer to protect my right to do the right thing. Thank you, Thom.
Yeah. Amen, Marie. Thank you. Very well said. And let me add, though, that I think one of the other things this is revealing is that, at least from the point of view of the cop who killed George Floyd, up until recently, this is how the system was supposed to work. It's still, Marie, thanks so much for the call. It is still, policing in the United States came out of the slave patrols. Let's be clear about this.
Listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Policing in the United States, and hopefully up until now, has been designed to oppress and frighten and keep down minorities. And welcome back. Let's see here. Joan in Nashville, Tennessee. Hey, Joan, what's up?
I don't know, Thom. I just want to say first to Michelle, I know exactly what you mean. But, we've always said, never let them see you cry. But my question to you, Thom, is, I've been thinking about this. Since white people have all of the guns, all of the power, all of the money, what in the world are they afraid of? And I want to ask you this and get your opinion. Is it because that white people think that if they ever stop aggressing against people of color, in particular African Americans or Africans in the diaspora, particularly that they are afraid of us because we are the epicenter of natural skin color? And because white people cannot produce that, they are afraid of becoming extinct as a race. And therefore, they cannot afford to live harmoniously with black people. And I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I remember, 30 years ago in the early 1980s, Dick Gregory and I went first to Germany and then to Uganda together. And we were discussing this, and he, what are white people afraid of? And he made the comment that, if somebody is has 1/6 or 1/8 or 1/20 or whatever black blood, then they can be called black. He said, doesn't that kind of indicate that we, speaking for himself, his saying this, not my saying this, that we are the superior race? That, is that what white people are afraid of? A little bit of contamination? I think, half speaking tongue in cheek, or at least he was presenting it that way. He was a comedian. He was also a good friend. But I honestly don't know, Joan. I think that, the old Chris Christopherson song, everybody's got to have somebody to look down on. It's almost like every society figures out a way to create a caste system, like in India, where you've got the untouchable class, the caste, the very lowest caste. And the easiest way to enforce a caste system, because I think if you're going to have really rich people at the top, you're going to have really poor people at the bottom. And so if you're going to create a caste system, the easiest and most efficient way to do it is by picking people for the upper caste and the lower caste and even the middle castes who are easily and immediately identified. You don't have to listen to their accent. You don't have to ask them their name or where they live. You can just look at the color of their skin. And frankly, that's what we've done in this country for 400 years. I think that that's really what it is, Joan, but I don't have an easy answer. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thanks,
Joan,
Tom.
thanks so much for the call. Yeah, good talking to you. Thank you so much, and thanks for watching Free Speech TV. We'll be right back. It's 10 minutes before the hour. We'll be short. If you've ever wondered about neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, or particularly how NLP applies to families where a member of the family has ADHD, check out my new book, Living with ADHD, with a foreword by Richard Bandler, the inventor of NLP. The only two presidents who were ever impeached, thus, credibly accused of crimes that rose to the level of impeachment, and then those crimes were indicted in the House of Representatives with an impeachment vote and tried in the United States Senate. The only two presidents that had that happen, by coincidence, and I'm sure it's just a coincidence, are the only two presidents whose Department of Justice's Office of Legal Counsel wrote a memo saying you can't arrest a sitting president. What he's doing is too important. He's too busy. He would never go out on the golf course 1/3 of his presidency. He's busy. You can't arrest him. And Trump now is claiming that not only can't you arrest him, you can't even investigate him, even if he commits murder. Anyway, we've got a video about a president who actually did get arrested for a crime and convicted of it. You can check it out over at thomhartmann.com. It's one of our listener-supported videos. Check it out. Tag, you're it. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. I was just speaking with, and I'm sorry, I think I have spaced her name, a caller, Joan, I think was her name, I believe, just a second ago, and it brought up this point of, why us, basically, why black people, why, what's the deal here? Are white people afraid of melanin in the skin, that kind of thing? And the point that I made, and I just want to repeat it, is that if you look at the history of the human race in general, pretty much every society over time develops a caste system, a hierarchy. It's something that I think, frankly, came out of the agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago, because you don't so much see this among hunting and gathering people, among indigenous and aboriginal people. You, by and large, don't see this. But you absolutely see this in agricultural and industrial and post-industrial societies, that they develop a caste system. If you're going to have people at the very, very top who have everything, who have all the wealth, all the power, you've got to have a much larger group at the bottom who have nothing, who have no power and no wealth. And you have to enforce that system in order to continuously extract the manpower, the labor, and the wealth from the people on the bottom to feed to the people at the top. And the easiest way to do that, yes, there have been times when people who were immigrants from Ireland were discriminated against because of their Irish accents. They were identifiable, or from Italy because of their Italian accents. But the easiest way to enforce a caste system, and CASTE, a caste system like India has, is 5 castes. The bottom, the top caste are the Brahmins, I believe, and the bottom caste are the untouchables, the people who are hired to clean toilets and things, and are not invited for normal dialogue and discourse. And the easiest way to enforce a caste system is with the color of people's skin. That way you don't have to ask them where they live, you don't have to ask them what they do for a living, you don't have to listen for their accent. All you have to do is look. And that's what we've done here in the United States for 400 years, for 400 friggin' years. And I think it's starting to break down. I really do. But that might just be happy talk from a hopeful white guy. Time will tell. I mean, we'll know in a couple of years if this little, basically 6-month, 1-year period, maybe 2-3-year period, if you want to expand it a little more, the whole Black Lives Matter thing, movement, as it were. If this really was, to paraphrase Joe Madison, if this really was a movement and not a moment, or if it was just a moment that passes and we go back to, oh yeah, now we've got a Democrat in the White House, everything's good, let's stop talking about this. I mean, I'm not going to stop talking about it. I don't think most people are going to stop talking about it. I do think that change is here. Change hasn't obviously happened in the way that it needs to happen, but I think we're experiencing the birth pains right now. So, anyhow, Mark in Ocala, Florida. Hey, Mark, what's up?
Hey, Tom, I was actually, and that's my mistake, I'm actually calling you driving back from Atlanta. I drove up here to stand with the people in the decision concerning the Brooks shooting. But I wanted to just share something with you. I was talking to some of my fellow protesters, and I got in a conversation about your education of myself concerning the Second Amendment and the Fugitive Slave Army. So I want to thank you for educating anybody that needs to understand and learn that.
You're welcome, Mark. You're talking about the slave patrols, yeah.
Yes, and that's I've called your show a couple of times, and I'm a fellow Midwesterner, and I've lived in the South, joining the Marine Corps at age 18. But not to give my whole life story, I just wanted to say that that you mentioned earlier in one of your commercials, you were talking about Smedley Butler, who I also have grown to be a big fan of and understand him. Well, I know you're a John F. Kennedy expert, so I was going to tie the two. John F. Kennedy assassination expert, who his Joint Chiefs of Staff was a Marine who, by the way, worked for Smedley Butler in China, and then and worked and is a commissioned officer. He's a native of Greenwood, Indiana, who was influenced by Eugene Debs as a person growing up. So how about a small circle there? So and that is David M. Shoup, S-H-O-U-P. And I never knew who he was till I was working in the U.S. Embassy in Argentina, and I stumbled through the library. The embassy has a little tiny library, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, I wanted to find something to do guarding the embassy when we had Marines doing it, not civilian contractors in Benghazi at a CIA outpost. Right. Any case, Tom, I just want to say the shooting, the policeman in Atlanta, you can see he's reaching for his pistol prior to Brooks turning around. That's the crux of my call. And that's my point.
Yeah. Okay. Mark, you said you were in the military. Do you have law enforcement experience as well?
I do, Tom. I'm an ex-Miami cop. So I know deadly force. So I'm a trained, and I agree with your concepts you were discussing earlier in today's show. They do exist.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. It's good to hear from you. And thanks for being one of the good guys. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
So we've got a new video up over at thomhartmann.com for people who support our program, and it's there's a really troubling concatenation of events, events, that are happening in the United States right now. We created these concentration camps for refugees seeking asylum. This was Stephen Miller's big project. And we've got concentration camps for children, concentration camps for male adults, concentration camps for female adults. And now we've got this virus sweeping through the United States, and people are starting to die in these concentration camps, which has provoked ICE or whoever's running them to deport hundreds of the children back to the countries that they came from without their parents, which is mind-boggling, and in many cases carrying disease. This is serious stuff, and we need to be talking about it. The new video is over at thomhartmann.com. It's, what is it, Thursday? Yeah, it's Thursday here at Free Speech TV, and it's our next pet day. This is Ketty. Ketty was named after the movie about cats in Turkey, and if you haven't seen that movie, it's really worth the effort. He's kind of a mutt cat. He's got some Bengal and what else in him? He's mostly Bengal, but and he is crazy. He's 2 years old, crazy enthusiastic. This is the cat that we put on the TV screen. I've got a monitor downstairs where we put videos of birds and mice and things, and he stares at it for hours. He is such a hunter. So anyhow, that's mostly Louisa's cat, Ketty. You can call Free Speech TV right now and make your contribution and vote for the cat or dog of your choice. Today is a special day on Free Speech TV because we have a match. This is no doubt will be the last one of this pledge drive, which is only going to last through tomorrow, through Friday. But the match is just today, and it's a $12,000 match. Your gift will be doubled up to $12,000. A bunch of people got together to make this happen. This is just a spectacular effort. It really shows you, how people care about this program and people care about this network. Charles and Carla, Tom, Jeff, Abby and Mary in California, Suzanne in Virginia, Christina in Maryland, Ed and June in Oregon, Helen in Washington, Jim in North Carolina, Mac in Colorado. Mac's visited us a couple times here. He's become a friend. I mean, he's a fascinating guy. BJ in Texas. Several of these people, I'm recognizing these names. I know a couple of you have visited us. Many of you have contributed before to things like these matches, and it's just so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for offering this match so that everybody who calls right now, 877-378-8669, will have their gift doubled. Ketty, by the way, sleeps in the weirdest positions. He sleeps in postures that make you think he's dead. I was just like this. It's just incredible. Anyhow, vote for the cat of your choice, right? Fang is still my cat. I mean, he reminds me of Higgins. Higgins was a rescue cat too, who was just very, very vicious. We got Higgins from our son, and then, after Higgins died, well, not after he died, but before he died. But anyway, we got Fang from my brother. Anyhow, here are the premiums. The Thom Hartmann University. Sorry, I shouldn't be smiling too much because this is serious stuff. We're not hitting our goals, and hopefully this match will help us get there. But if you have not yet called and made a contribution to Free Speech TV, do it now, please. 877-378-8669. Please call now. With a $20 gift, you have your choice: the Thom Hartmann University proud student Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the brand new all-inclusive LGBTQ plus pride sticker. That's with a $20 gift. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the Just Effing Vote tote bag or the Free Speech TV webcam cover. With a $75 gift, you get the official Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $100 gift, you get a couple of Free Speech TV face masks. With a $120 gift, there's a whole bunch of goodies. You get your choice of one of these things with a $120 gift. And that would be my newest book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, American Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, autographed by the author, or The Hidden History of the War on Voting, autographed by the author, or The Social Distancing Kit, 2 Free Speech TV face masks and a hand sanitizer, the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or your choice of one of these 4 books on race that are really remarkable books. Michelle Alexander's classic, The New Jim Crow, Robin DiAngelo's classic, White Fragility, Dear White America by Tim Wise, and Uprooting Racism by Paul Kivel. With a $240 gift, we'll all get together on Zoom or Skype or whatever it is that we use and have a private 1-hour conversation. You and me and half a dozen other people, more or less. With a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University box with 2 Free Speech TV face masks, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, and the Just Effing Vote t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland here and hang out in the third hour of our show with Sean and me and Joyce, and sometimes Louise drops by. But that's going to probably be a year down the road. But you can reserve your place in line, and if you can afford a $1,000 gift, you also have our eternal thanks. Because the bottom line is, without your help, we don't have a television network. It's just that simple. And we need your help. We have 2 days left, today and tomorrow, in this fund drive, and we are behind. And we need your help. So please call now, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution. But do it now. Do it during our program, please. 877-378-8669. By name.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Growing up, my dad was a Republican. And in fact, in 1964, when I was 13 years old, I went door to door for Barry Goldwater with my dad. 2 years later, I was being tear gassed and arrested in East Lansing during anti-war protests. So, how we changed. But my dad died a Republican. In fact, I was with him when he died. His 2 favorite pictures were on the wall next to him, me shaking hands with Pope John Paul II and George W. Bush on the aircraft carrier under the Mission Accomplished banner. But the Republican Party has really changed since my dad's day, and my dad died more than a decade ago. But I think the change goes way back before that. Steve Benen has done a deep dive into this. He's also the producer of the Rachel Maddow Show, the one program on television that I go out of my way to watch every single day, and commend to you as well. But he has a new book out, and it's brilliant. It's called The Imposters, How Republicans Quit Governing and Seized American Politics. He also edits the Maddow blog over on MSNBC, msnbc.com/Maddow blog. And his Twitter handle is Steve Benen, B-E-N-E-N. Steve, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you with us. So first of all, the title of your book, The Imposters, when did the Republican Party become imposters? It seems to me like this started in the 80s, that a lot of people came into the Republican Party, or a lot of when the Republicans really got power during the Reagan Revolution, and a lot of them actually were believing their own BS, the stuff out of the 60s and 70s and 50s even. Russell Kirk back then in 1951, the conservative mind. And when they realized that it didn't work and that it was a scam, they started becoming cynics. Am I off base here, or what have you learned from your research?
I don't think you're off base. I mean, I think that there were roots of a far-right shift in Republican politics and abandonment of all kinds of any kind of sense of moderation or compromise. I think we saw roots of that in the 80s and 90s, particularly, I think, with Newt Gingrich's rise in the mid-90s. But for the purposes of my book, the point I emphasize is that it was at the end of the Bush-Cheney era when Republicans basically found themselves at a crossroads. The public had largely rejected the Republican agenda on foreign policy, on domestic policy. Democrats had just won 2 wave elections in a row. And I think the party was really at a point at that moment was at a time in which it needed to decide what kind of party it was going to be, what kind of agenda was it going to pursue, what were its policies, what were its priorities. And the argument that I make in my book is that GOP officials at that point basically decided that they weren't going to even have an agenda, that they were going to define themselves by their opposition to whatever Barack Obama was for. Even when Barack Obama agreed with them, they would change their minds and say they were against their own ideas. And that, I think, laid the groundwork for 8 years in which Republicans basically abandoned the very idea that governing was important and that policymaking should be taken seriously. And that, in turn, I think laid a groundwork for for a candidate to rise in Republican politics who embodied this post-policy attitude, and that, of course, is Donald Trump.
Isn't Obamacare kind of the personification of that writ large? I mean, this was a policy. Let's have a national health care system that is founded on or deeply rooted in a existing for-profit health insurance industry. This was a policy that was proposed back in the late 1980s by the Heritage Foundation. It was put into place in Massachusetts by the Republican governor Mitt Romney. He was going to run for president on its success. And so Barack Obama comes and rolls this out, and I'm guessing he fully expected Republicans would say, finally, something we can agree on. And no. Was that a turning point, or was that simply a flare in the sky that should have awakened us all?
Well, it's funny. It's like you're reading from chapter 3 for me. This is exactly one of the points that I emphasize in the book. One of the things I liked about the ACA, for all of its flaws, is the way in which Democrats approached it like a governing party. There were extensive hearings. There were meetings with stakeholders. There were town hall sessions nationwide. There was a great debate, a great discussion as to what kind of healthcare system we needed, how would the ACA resolve it, how is this going to work, and whether there are flaws in the ACA. Any kind of project of this scope and scale is going to have flaws, but I think that the law was designed to be a moderate approach that was based on bipartisan principles. And I think the expectation was in the Democratic White House at the time was that they were approaching this in a serious way, and if Republicans stepped up, there could be some real cooperation here. They could find some common ground. What, of course, the Obama administration found was that Republicans refused to engage in the policymaking in any level, in any kind of seriousness at all. They came up with ridiculous ideas like death panels and abortion taxes. It was an absurd moment in American politics when we were supposed to be having what was effectively the Super Bowl of policy fights. We expected both Democrats and Republicans to step up and offer their A games, and what we found was that one party had no A game to bring. And then, of course, that laid the groundwork for Donald Trump and Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and others in 2017 to try and repeal the ACA, at which point they decided to move forward with this regressive plan with no congressional hearings. I mean, this, to me, is really kind of captures the moment, and it captures the spirit of my book, because here we have an opportunity to compare apples to apples. When Democrats approached the ACA, they did it in a serious way over the course of many, many months with extensive scrutiny and hearings, and then we can compare that 7 years later to the way Republicans approached it. We approached the same issue with no scrutiny, no hearings, indifference to policy, indifference to stakeholders, and this, I think, captures the essence of my argument. We can compare apples to apples and see one party took it seriously and one party did not.
Yeah, and I'm on the mailing list for FreedomWorks. It's fairly easy to get on, and the group that the Koch brothers founded. David Koch in 1980 ran for vice president on the Libertarian ticket on a platform that he and his brother heavily funded, basically made the party, of ending Social Security, privatizing Social Security, ending Medicare, ending Medicaid, ending public schools, all these things. And then through FreedomWorks, they created the Tea Party, this opposition to the Affordable Care Act. And through all state policy institutes and all these other systems and programs, they basically own the Republican Party right now. This small group of right-wing billionaires, libertarian billionaires, have the Kochs, or now it's just Charles, and their buddies. Has this group in the minute and a half or so we've got left until we hit a hard break here, Steve. Have they become the tail that wags the dog of the Republican Party? Have they completely consumed it? Is that what's going on, or is it much larger or deeper or different than that?
See, I look at it a little bit differently. I mean, I think certainly big money makes a big difference. But at the same time, I think that a lot of those folks on the right actually have policy priorities. Whereas I look at Donald Trump and Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and others, and I see a party that is just takes a more nihilistic approach to substance, unlike some of their billionaire friends who actually want to get certain things done.
But they're taking the legislation from the billionaires. I mean, ALEC is the classic example of that. The billionaires or their industries associated with them say, here's how the legislation should be. Let's have criminal justice reform with mens rea so that you can't send CEOs to jail anymore. Cool, we'll do that. Isn't it coming in that route?
But what happens when those bills arrive on Capitol Hill? We see committee hearings that don't really go anywhere. We see Republicans who are not interested in really engaging in the substance of the debate. We see them basically blowing off GAO reports and CBO reports because they're not serious about policymaking. And that leads to a political crisis that I think we're dealing with every day.
How is this going to get resolved? How does this end?
I'm of the opinion that parties change when voters tell them that they have to. And so when I sketch out in my 11th chapter, my last chapter, some of the things some of the ways forward, it's ultimately up to voters, and we'll see what happens in November.
There you go. Steve Benen, producer of The Rachel Maddow Show, but more importantly, the author of The Imposters, or at least for the purpose of this conversation, more importantly, How Republicans Quit Governing and Seized American Politics. His Twitter handle, Steve Benen, B-E-N-E-N. Steve, thanks so much for dropping by today.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And be sure to check out the Maddow blog, by the way. It's brilliant. Steve is over there all the time. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
15 minutes past the hour, back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. And welcome back. Let's see here. Tim in Los Angeles. Hey, Tim, thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Oh, just the usual. I brought this up on your program like once every 6 months or so. The key, really, to me, the linchpin, is getting the news back in to an independent realm where the news does not have to have high ratings or make money, but is owed to everybody the truth, because, it's the linchpin. It's people, it's saved us over and over again in the past when, people were informed. When people know where they stand, they're able to make moves to counter things. Right now, we're just like lost in the woods. We're being like constantly misinformed or not informed at all.
Right. And the turning point for that, Tim, FYI, was 1987. From 1924 until 1987, radio and TV stations, in order to essentially pay for their use of public airwaves and their monopoly over public airwaves, if you didn't have a FCC license, you weren't allowed to broadcast. In order to pay for that, they had to do what was called programming in the public interest. It was something called the Fairness Doctrine. And that was interpreted by the FCC to mean that on radio you had to have news at least once an hour, and on television you had to have an hour's worth of news during the primetime block. And that was typically a half hour of national news and a half hour of local news. And in 1987, Ronald Reagan directed the Federal Communications Commission to stop enforcing the Fairness Doctrine. And in 2011, Barack Obama eliminated it, had it removed entirely from the FCC code, from the law. And that was, within 6 months of Reagan stopping the enforcement of the Fairness Doctrine, CBS moved their news division, which had been losing money, under the umbrella of their entertainment division, and CBS News started pumping out fluff stories about advertisers and fluff stories that that were essentially clickbait.
So how do
this was before there were clicks, but yeah, go ahead.
So how do we bring it back to that? I don't see any movement or legislation to repair that.
Well, there have been attempts, and Bernie Sanders has actually authored legislation to do this. It just never went anywhere. There are two things that need to be done. The first is in 1996, when Bill Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act, which kind of created the modern internet in a way. What it also did was it blew up what are called ownership rules. It used to be that in the same town, one company or one family or one person couldn't own the TV station, the radio station, and the newspaper. You had to pick. You take one of the three. And you couldn't own more than, I think it was 10 or 15 nationwide. And in 96, when Clinton signed that legislation, that ended that. So now we've got this media monopoly, plus you've got the death of the fairness doctrine. We need to repeal both those things. We need to reinstate. We need to reinstate the fairness doctrine, and we need to reinstate the ownership limits that were blown up in 1996. And I think those two things solve the problem. Tim, I got to run, but thank you for the call. It's a thoughtful question and a real tough issue, because the telecommunications industry now has just mind-boggling power. We'll be back. It's coming up on 20 minutes past the hour. Stick around. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, taking back the mainstream media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here.
Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program.
In our special video for supporters of our program, people who sign up over at thomhartmann.com, this week it's the story of what the rich libertarian billionaires who have been funding the Libertarian Party and the Republican Party for, well, in a big way since the election of Ronald Reagan for the last 40 years, and have succeeded by owning politicians and owning the Republican Party in preventing us from even getting a public option, much less a national health care system. What they are doing, what their answer is, what their response is to the question, what do we do when things really go bad? When the economy's falling apart, when epidemic disease is sweeping the country, what do we do? Well, it turns out they've got an answer. It's just not an answer for all the rest of us. They're getting in their private jets and heading off to their private little bunkers. Seriously, that's what they're up to. So I lay out the whole story, complete with details and names, over at thomhartmann.com. Check it out. Thanks so much. So I mentioned an hour or two ago that I wanted to talk to you about World War III. I want to bring this up. I don't know where to go with it, but I'm a little, more than a little, concerned about the fate and future of the world. We've had, every now and then we have this conversation on this program. It's been a while because, these kinds of conversations have been largely overshadowed by conversations about policing and race and frankly, the general insanity of the Trump administration. But I just wanted to read to you. Oh, and by the way, before I go any farther, just to correct something I said earlier, I said that it was the governor in New Jersey who was importing PPE from South Korea. It turns out I was wrong. It was Larry Hogan, the Republican governor of Maryland. And so anyhow, and tip of the hat to my friend Joe who told me about that. But I want to read to you just a little block of headlines from last night's Drudge Report. I was just, looking at all the various news sites, and Drudge is one that I check out, typically at least once a day to see what the kind of right-leaning, media has to say. And every single one of these headlines were in one block on the Drudge website. Update: China, India, violent battle in Himalayas. That's one. These are all links to news stories, of course. That's how Drudge works. The second: fists, stones, clubs, brutal high-altitude, low-tech clash. This is, again, about the battle between India and China that led to the death of 20 Indian soldiers. Number three: Modi, he's the Prime Minister of India, warns of befitting reply if tensions worsen. Then the next one: North Korea to deploy army after blowing up embassy.
Okay, so we've got India and China on the verge of war. We've got North Korea and South Korea on the verge of war. Then the next headline, Taiwan warns off intruding Chinese aircraft fourth time in days. And the Chinese have declared their intention to take back Taiwan. And personally, I believe, particularly since Donald Trump has reached out to President Xi, we now know this from John Bolton's book, he has explicitly reached out to Xi and asked him for help getting reelected, that he's not going to go up against Xi. And if China wants to take Taiwan, they're going to have to do it between now and January. Because I don't think Joe Biden will put up with that. So you've got that headline. Then the next one, America scrambles jets to escort Russian nuke bombers near U.S. border. This, by the way, I believe was the fourth time in the last week or so. It's like the Russians are now poking at our defenses with nuclear bombers. That would not be a good thing. A war between the United States and Russia would be, the two most heavily nuclear-armed powers in the world would be, that could end all life on Earth, or at least all human life. And then finally, Turkey draws up plans to invade Greece and Armenia. These are, I was just sitting there reading and just looking at these headlines and I'm thinking, this has to be what the headlines were looking like in the months before World War I. There were all these regional conflicts happening around Europe, and they were getting reported as if they were all separate, discrete, individual things. When in fact, what was happening is like the entire international order was breaking down. Now, part of that, you could argue, was because much of the international order as we went into World War I was being held together in the southern part of Europe and the northern part of Africa by the Ottoman Empire, or throughout the Middle East in particular, and throughout much of the rest of the world by the former British Empire. And the British Empire was disintegrating. It was crumbling. It was rotting from within. But they had been holding together the world since, the mid-1700s. And then the British Empire pretty much ended by the end of World War I. And right now, the American empire is crumbling. We're watching it with our eyes. It's being taken apart step by step, stone by stone, building by building, agency by agency, by Donald Trump and the Republican Party. And I think Steve Benen's book, Imposters, speaks to why. Because they've become the party of grifters, hustlers, low-rent con artists. And the result of that is that American influence and power in the world, whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, has waned. And so who's stepping in to fill that vacuum? The Chinese and the Russians. And again, I'm not saying that this is a good thing or a bad thing. What I'm saying is this is what's called the Thucydides trap. As an existing power declines in power, and an emerging power, in this case two of them, China and Russia, as emerging powers rise in power, that's the point of maximal danger in terms of war. Are you concerned as I am?
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Or am I just some rambling old historian here who's, freaked out about something that just, hey, this is just normal? I don't think so. It's, what is it, Thursday? Yeah, it's Thursday here at Free Speech TV. And it's our next pet day. This is Ketty. Ketty was named after the movie about cats in Turkey. And if you haven't seen that movie, it's really worth the effort. He's kind of a mutt cat. He's got some Bengal and what else in him? He's mostly Bengal, but and he is crazy. He's 2 years old, crazy enthusiastic. This is the cat that we put on the TV screen
I've got a monitor downstairs where we put videos of birds and mice and things, and he stares at it for hours. He is such a hunter. So anyhow, that's mostly Louisa's cat, Ketty. But you know, you can call Free Speech TV right now and make your contribution and vote for the cat or dog of your choice. Today is a special day on Free Speech TV because we have a match. This is no doubt will be the last one of this pledge drive, which is only going to last through tomorrow, through Friday. But the match is just today, and it's a $12,000 match. Your gift will be doubled up to $12,000. A bunch of people got together to make this happen. This is just, you know, just a spectacular effort. It really shows you, you know, how people care about this program and people care about this network. Charles and Carla, Tom, Jeff, Abby and Mary in California, Suzanne in Virginia, Christina in Maryland, Ed and June in Oregon, Helen in Washington, Jim in North Carolina, Mac in Colorado. Mac's visited us a couple times here. You know, he's become a friend. I mean, he's a fascinating guy. BJ in Texas. Several of these people, you know, I'm recognizing these names. I know a couple of you have visited us. Many of you have contributed before to things like these matches, and it's just so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for offering this match so that everybody who calls right now, 877-378-8669, will have their gift doubled. Ketty, by the way, sleeps in the weirdest positions. He sleeps in postures that make you think he's dead. I was just like this. It's just incredible. Anyhow, vote for the cat of your choice, right? You know, Fang is still my cat. I mean, he reminds me of Higgins. Higgins was a rescue cat too, who was just very, very vicious. We got Higgins from our son, and then, you know, after Higgins died, well, not after he died, but before he died. But anyway, we got Fang from my brother. Anyhow, here are the premiums. The Thom Hartmann University. Sorry, I shouldn't be smiling too much because this is serious stuff. We're not hitting our goals, and hopefully this match will help us get there. But if you have not yet called and made a contribution to Free Speech TV, do it now, please. 877-378-8669. Please call now. With a $20 gift, you have your choice: the Thom Hartmann University, proud student Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, or the brand new all-inclusive LGBTQ plus pride sticker. That's with a $20 gift. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the Just Effing Vote tote bag or the Free Speech TV webcam cover. With a $75 gift, you get the official Thom Hartmann Program mug. With a $100 gift, you get a couple of Free Speech TV face masks. With a $120 gift, there's a whole bunch of goodies. You get your choice of one of these things with a $120 gift, and that would be my newest book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, American Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, autographed by the author, or The Hidden History of the War on Voting, autographed by the author, or the Social Distancing Kit, 2 Free Speech TV face masks and a hand sanitizer, the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or your choice of one of these 4 books on race that are really remarkable books: Michelle Alexander's classic, The New Jim Crow, Robin DiAngelo's classic, White Fragility, Dear White America by Tim Wise, and Uprooting Racism by Paul Kivel. With a $240 gift, we'll all get together on Zoom or Skype or whatever it is that we use and have a private 1-hour conversation. You know, you and me and half a dozen other people, more or less. With a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University box with 2 Free Speech TV face masks, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, and the Just Effing Vote t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Portland here and hang out in the 3rd hour of our show with Sean and me and Joyce. And sometimes Louise drops by. But that's going to probably be a year down the road. But you can reserve your place in line, and if you can afford a $1,000 gift, you also have our eternal thanks. Because the bottom line is, without your help, we don't have a television network. It's just that simple. And we need your help. We have 2 days left, today and tomorrow, on this fund drive, and we are behind, and we need your help. So please call now, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org and make your contribution, but do it now. Do it during our program, please. 877-378-8669.
Morgan, Lewis Henry Morgan.
Coming up on the Science Revolution, biodiversity is dying as Trump opens 5,000 square miles of the ocean to the free market. Dr. Lauren Waller joins us to discuss how and why native plants can sequester carbon better and longer. Plus, Jim Adams from the Alaska National Parks Conservation Association is here on why Trump is allowing hunters to kill bear cubs in their dens. Are big game hunters like Don Jr. gleefully heading to Alaska to kill baby animals again? And cultural economist Dr. Jacobo Williams talks about how studies show black deaths at the hands of law enforcement are linked to historical lynchings. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever you find great podcasts. So on the line with us today is Senator Tammy Duckworth, the Democrat from Illinois. She is an Iraq War veteran, a Purple Heart recipient, the former Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, among the first handful of Army women to actually fly combat missions during Operation Iraqi Freedom, during which she was fairly badly wounded. And she has just served with such extraordinary distinction in the United States Senate. I know the citizens of Illinois were on WCPT in particular in Chicago are so happy to have her as a senator. Senator Duckworth, welcome to the program. It's great to have you back on. It's been a while. I wonder if you could start out by talking about your thoughts on the current state of our policing in the United States. This is particularly a big issue in Chicago, but it's increasingly all over the country, even in small town America. We see police operating as if they were some sort of occupying force. You were part of the military. What does this say to you?
Well, I think, a lot of the systemic racism that exists in our criminal justice system has always been there. We're just more aware of it now. And I think, thank goodness for the rise of cell phone cameras, because we are now getting evidence of it. So we're not just trusting folks are saying, hey, I was, was racial bias, but people are actually able to record video. And, in Chicago, the most famous, of course, is the killing of Laquan McDonald, after which I worked with before she became our mayor, Mayor Lightfoot, Lori Lightfoot, on my first criminal justice reform legislation, where we talked about, really providing training for police forces against the systemic bias and systemic racism, and also the need for independent investigation of police-involved shootings and killings. I think this has existed, but we're just more aware of it now. And of course, what's happening is that people are just not going to take it anymore. And I think we're also seeing that there is increased militarization of our police forces with the transfer of military equipment to police forces. And that's problematic as well. I think some things we certainly should be transferring, but, it's become more and more in recent years so that you actually have police forces that have mine resistance vehicles, MRAPs and other pieces of military equipment that were designed for combat against Al-Qaeda. And you find them on the streets of our cities and our towns.
Do you think that undoing Reagan's 1033 program is a piece of the solution? Where do we begin with this?
Well, I don't think that you undo it. I think that you can modify it. Listen, the initial instinct for transferring MRAPs and other things were because of terrorists, Atlanta Olympics bombings and all sorts of, the Boston Marathon bombings, the police forces and the SWAT teams, are going to have need of some of this stuff. That was the original intent behind it. But do we really need to transfer machine guns with a caliber greater than 50 caliber munitions on them to the police forces? We need to start to take a look at some of this. Now, I fully support, being able to transfer body armor in Illinois, in our rural communities, we have many communities that don't have a lot of funds, and if they can obtain body armor to protect our police officers, I think that's a good thing. But do we need, again, very high caliber weaponry? I think twice about that. So I think maybe we need to take a look at modifying it, not necessarily eliminating it.
Yeah, the United States has a long history of outside of the Civil War, and some would argue some of the rebellions during George Washington's presidency, but basically not ever turning guns on the civilian populace, the military specifically. We saw in Lafayette Square a week or so ago, Donald Trump used the National Guard of several different states against peaceful protesters. Tom Cotton published a piece, who I'm convinced wants to run for president in 2024 on the fascist ticket. We saw Tom Cotton publish a piece in the New York Times, basically saying, no, it should have been the military. It should have been the airborne. That it chills me. I mean, where are we at with all this? What's the state of posse comitatus? What's the sentiment of the Senate when it comes to things like, the president using the military against the people?
Well, I will tell you that I'm personally absolutely appalled, and I think most Democratic senators are absolutely appalled that the president has done this. And if you see from the writings from numerous retired generals, whether it's Colin Powell or others, that they too are very much appalled at this abuse of the military. The National Guard has training on crowd control and that role. You get that training. Active duty forces never, ever have that civil disobedience training on how to properly deal with protesters, especially those who are out peacefully exercising, the First Amendment rights. And so the active duty forces are absolutely wrong troops to move in. And I think if we talk to my former colleague John Lewis and others who were part of the civil rights movement, that we had used the military against civilians before in the 60s, and that was not a good thing. And we should certainly not return to some of the egregious actions at that time, and we have to stand up to this president. I was very disappointed in Secretary Esper, because he went along with this ruling from Mr. Barr that the Insurrection Act would be something that was appropriate initially. It's not in this case. Yeah. And so the military has to stand up, and the military leaders have to stand up to this president.
You're on the Armed Services Committee in the United States Senate, Senator Duckworth. Do you think that it is we're at a point where it's necessary to legislatively constrain or put some guardrails essentially around the executive branch when it comes to this issue?
Well, I hate to have to go there because we should just be in the legislative branch and stop ceding our control over to the president. Under Mitch McConnell, we have just handed over our legislative oversight of the executive branch on so many things. We appropriated money for the defense budget, and the president took money from the defense budget to go build his border wall. We don't oppose him when it comes to their use of the AUMF. And by the way, this is not just a Trump thing. The Obama administration also stretched the definition of the 2001 and 2002 authorizations for use of military force against Al Qaeda to expand into other areas. So we just have to put our foot down and say, listen, this is our role, and we're going to provide oversight. But unfortunately, the Justice Department, which we rely on, and the inspectors generals that we rely on to provide oversight, are no longer there, because this president has fired them all, and Mitch McConnell has stacked the courts with ultra-conservative judges who are just going to be rubber stamps with this president. So, yes, we could do it legislatively, but I will tell you that it wouldn't pass. It doesn't pass muster when we can actually do this by just stressing our constitutional role as a co-equal branch of government. That's where we should be doing this.
If we get a Senate majority, a Democratic Senate majority after the elections this November, well, in January when you all are sworn back in, where do we start in undoing the damage that this president has done?
Well, there's just so much that needs to be done. I think that we need to start with the Justice Department, and we need to take a look into some of the decisions that the Justice Department has made. I think we need to, make sure to invest power back into the inspectors generals, whether it's through the confirmation process, and making sure that we put into place inspectors generals who will stand up to this president or any future president. And I think that there are some legislative fixes that need to happen, and some guardrails that do need to be explored, because it's just gone far too far. And I don't think our founding fathers ever expected. They put in the checks and balances, but they never expected legislators to just hand over our powers to the executive branch.
Right. Yeah, it is pretty grim. Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois, thank you so much for being with us today. It's great talking with you. And welcome, and thank you, Senator Duckworth. We're going to hit a break here in just a few seconds, but it's been reported that ICE detention centers, these for-profit prison camps, are spraying this, Not Road Untraveled posted this over at Democratic Underground, and compiled a great list of links, are spraying detainees with the disinfectant chemicals that the manufacturer warns are dangerous. These detainees have reported that their cramped living areas are being sprayed up to 50 times a day, and that they're being forced to remain in the areas being sprayed. They're suffering pain, bleeding, and serious skin problems. We need to raise hell.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Donald Trump and Stephen Miller have caged human beings like animals. And now they're using Nazi iconography in their ads. And welcome back. Simon in Aberdeen, New Jersey. Hey, Simon, what's on your mind today? Thanks for watching Free Speech.
Hey, how are you, Tom? Good to talk to you again. I've got a couple of suggestions. First off, I just shut the speakerphone off. I have a couple of suggestions as to how to de-escalate police violence. Number one being, the police should, in my estimation, should be forced to use biometric guns. That would stop their excuse for, escalating situations, because the gun would be useless in anybody else's hands. The second, which is a little bit crass, is basically to give them a quota. And, depending on what the demographics of the area that they're policing are, give them a quota. That way, if there's 60% white, 20% Hispanic, 20% black, they would have to equally administer their behavior.
Yeah, the problem, Simon, with requiring police departments to racially match the neighborhoods that they police is that a lot of neighborhoods are in transition. They're constantly changing, and you're going to find that becomes, a dog chasing its tail. But a simple way to accomplish pretty much the same thing is to require police officers to live in the neighborhoods they police.
Okay, I was going to say that, actually. You're right, 100%.
And so if a neighborhood is changing and a cop moves out because they don't like that change or whatever it may be, they're going to have to leave the police department. They're going to have to move on, to the police department in the new neighborhood that they're moving to. But I think that there are a lot of things that we can. Go ahead.
The suggestion could be adjusted as the demographics change. At least there would be some kind of accountability.
Yeah, I get it, Simon, and I think that there's a lot of steps that we need to take, and you know, it's good to have a conversation about it. Jennifer in Seattle, and thank you, Simon, for the call. Jennifer in Seattle, what's up, Jennifer?
Oh, hi there, Tom. Thank you for the discussion. Last week in the newspaper, there was an article by a columnist by the name of Charles Blow advocating for a Civil Rights Act of 2020. And he basically, he says, you know, it's admirable that our Congress is working on police reform, and we need to do that. But it really kind of punishes the system's soldiers without addressing the system itself. And I agree 100% with what he's talking about. I think what we're witnessing is like the paroxysm of 50 years of whitewashing Dr. King's legacy as anything except for economic justice, which is what he calls for. And what we really need, I think, as white people, we need to step up and say, let's talk about redistribution of wealth. It's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, but I don't think we're going to have lasting change until we start talking about the hard issues. And I just wanted to, I called my congressperson this morning and said, please consider this. And I wanted to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I agree. And Charles Blow is one of my favorite columnists over at the New York Times. I agree that we need a new Civil Rights Act. We need a new Voting Rights Act, too, after the Supreme Court gutted the previous one. And they need to reflect the sensibilities of today rather than the sensibilities of 1965. Jennifer, thank you. Spot on. And we'll be right back. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the end. We're building a series of books about the hidden history of America, starting with the hidden history of guns and the Second Amendment, then the hidden history of the Supreme Court and the betrayal of America, then the hidden history of the war on voting, now the hidden history of monopolies and how big business destroyed the American dream, and then next spring will be the hidden history of oligarchy. You can find them all wherever fine books are available. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Susan in Inglis, Florida. Hey, Susan, what's on your mind today?
Well, Tom, I'm a fan of Professor Wolff, and you have such a good show today. But when he discussed the bonds and so forth, it reminded me of what was happening in 2008 with the bundling of all these loans and how people wound up losing their houses because all these bundles of loans were passed on and became toxic. And I'm wondering, now they're doing I'm making a comparison, and now they're doing the same thing with these bonds. They're bundling them until they become toxic, selling it back to us, and again, we're going to be left holding the bag as taxpayers. I'll take your answer off line, so you can talk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. I appreciate the call. I agree, and that was a very bizarre time. And basically, what the Fed did is it stepped in and it bought a lot of those tranches. They called these slices of these giant pies of mortgages. In many cases, disintegrating mortgages, and then they basically bribed the rating agencies to jack up the ratings, and then they sold them to things like pension funds and retirement funds, and it was a disaster. And I think there are some very clear parallels there. I agree. Mike in Barney Lake, Washington. Hey, Mike, what's on your mind today?
Afternoon, Tom. Hey, really quick, your bottom hour headlines. Yeah, you have a right to be concerned. I have been for a very long time. Yesterday on CNN, Senator Langsford let it slip, I guess, that there's going to be over 80 test sites in Tulsa, Oklahoma for this rally. Not only was that concerning when I heard but it was...
You mean testing people for COVID?
COVID, yeah, COVID testing sites. And the reporter didn't even follow up on that comment he made. So who knows which tests are they? Are they the rapid response? Are they testing patrons before they go in, as they come out? It was concerning.
That's fascinating.
But yeah, yesterday afternoon, Senator Langsford, defending the purpose of having the rally, said precautionarily they're putting in 80 test sites.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Jim Lankford is the Republican senator from Oklahoma. To have 80 test sites in one city is a pretty big deal. Of course, again, let me point out, as the country was melting down, or at least as blue states were melting down, because blue states tend to be the places where you have large cities, where you have a lot of international air traffic and people from and prosperity. So those people are traveling around the world doing business or taking vacations, and they're coming back, and which is exactly what happened in New York. This came from Europe. And then it spreads to the population. You have very mobile people in high density places, and these big cities tend to be in blue states. And so while the blue states were melting down in March and April and early May, the Trump administration was literally stealing PPE from them, intercepting shipments for them, and all this, there's this whole spectrum of stuff. And now I'm expecting to see this shoveled out the back door into the red states as they start to get infected. And so it may well be that testing equipment was also stolen from the blue states, and it's being rolled out now in Oklahoma. So, call me a what do you call it, a conspiracy theorist. I'll own that. But I'm with you. Yeah, Mike, thanks for the heads up on that. It's something, thank you. It's worth keeping an eye out on. Melissa in Huachuca City, Arizona. Am I saying it right, Melissa?
What? Yeah, closer than last time. Huachuca City. Okay. Yeah, Tom, I basically dialed you up right after Michelle in the first hour. You would have thought that any intelligent cop would have considered that in this time of the time after the killer cops killing George Floyd, maybe they should be erring on the side of caution, be their best selves. But instead, they shot Mr. Brooks in the back, kicked him, stood on him, did everything that they could think to do. And I suddenly realized that their actions may have been their best selves. And how scary is that?
These people are big game hunters. They're killers. And instead of hunting, like Don Jr. takes $70,000 in taxpayer money and goes hunting bighorn sheep in the Himalayas. Instead, these guys are hunting people.
Yeah, I really do hate thinking that way, but I'm thinking that way. I thought the country was waking up, but by torturous day, I see it's not. On the murderous cops, on the day the murderous cops killed George Floyd, I emailed Senator Klobuchar about how ashamed I felt to be white and have all this privilege when all our black brethren are being slaughtered. I didn't get an answer from her. She was right there in her state when this happened. But we all need to wake up and fix this. We whites need to make sure that black Americans can vote and do all the things that we can do, every bit of it. And, redistribution of wealth, I'm for it. Anyway, thank you very much for what you do, Tom.
Thank you, Melissa. Great to hear from you. I think Reverend Al said really eloquently, get your knee off my neck. And it's time for white people to own the fact that collectively our knee is on the necks of black people in this country and other minorities as well, but in particular black people, and do something about it. Thanks so much for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow. Anything Goes Friday, same time, same place. And in the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us. That includes you. So get out there, get active, tag your it. We'll see you tomorrow. Be good to yourself and people around you. Tough times.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
There's a general sentiment today that multimillionaire corporate chieftains are pigs.